working on the new website all day today?
It sounds like you guys made some great progress.
Huge progress.
Really good. Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, so I've got it in here for you, just in case we got it. So I just wanted to remind you. Yeah, sometimes issues with sounds. All right.
Maybe I should just, use my bag first.
There you go. There you go. I'll set this up over here for you.
That's four. Yeah, four. Oh, wait a minute. Let me say that again. Yeah, that's four.
Everything all right? Like that. Want to go to church?
I'll check out. I heard you had the other two doctor today.
Yes, I did. Solving world problems, you know. Absolutely. Absolutely. Mrs. Stone, how are you tonight?
I'm all right. How are you?
Doing well. I like that red thing.
Oh, thank you.
Good look there.
Yeah, I always thought blue was my best color, but it's red.
Oh, red. You know it.
Thank you.
Not even close.
I'm gonna need my clothes.
Yeah, they call me a lot, but not that.
I'm gonna dig it out.
Mr. Jonigan, how are you?
This whole thing.
That's a good effort, I tell you. There's a lot to it.
My son said, "Did you read that whole thing?" I said, "I'm reading the whole thing."
So will you be
Making sure.
there on Monday, March 7th?
It's all good,
No,
so.
no, okay. I just wanted to double check and make sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
she's not, yeah, she's good there.
Yeah, she's here. I thought it happened too.
I don't think I'm gonna go with that. Maybe. Noonan is here, so we could do the Super Troopers show. We're here tonight now to go over the electronic ceremony conducted as part of the search for district leader. Yeah. That's actually easy.
Hello. How are you?
No, I do not. You know that, but yes.
How you holding up?
Fine, how are you?
Little dog paddling going on out.
Got a few things going on.
Kind of busy these days.
Can I pour some water?
Me. Thank you, thank you. Oh, I'm so thirsty.
Take the side road here and pour one for myself.
Is what we call it here.
Homemade.
That's right, that old trick.
So you ready for this process to be over?
You know, we're just plugging along. Got a lot of work to do, so. We're working.
If you have any questions, he knows how to reach me.
Mine? Bailey goes there.
Here's our trustee, El President.
Sorry?
Purple tie? Got the memo?
Oh, look at you. Oh, no. Not on the heels of Peter.
Okay.
I mean, Peter's mom.
Correct, yeah, but if you just announce that
Yep. I'll do it.
family don't.
Well, yesterday I was, or last time I had the damn thing.
Probably not, but hold that thought. Hi, Maddie.
Good evening, or good afternoon, right? Technically. I actually have to sign up for this. So this is not.
Thank you. Makes everything better now.
Yeah. What? Okay, if you want to log in, you can now. Oh, good. All right, let's see, I'm gonna call. All right, good evening, everybody, or good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Sorry we're starting a few minutes late. It's completely 100% my fault, and I accept as such. So we are going to go ahead and head into calling the meeting to order for our study session, and we'll turn it right over to Mr. Hancock. And Mr. Highland, thank you for being here tonight. I keep saying tonight, this afternoon, gentlemen.
Thank you, President Bullock, governing board members. The first item as a part of the study session is a presentation and discussion of the results of the electronic survey conducted as part of the search for a district superintendent. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Steve Highland from ASBA.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the governing board, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here, and we have an exciting agenda ahead of us. You received your results of the e-survey, the electronic survey that went out to the community. You had over 3,000 responses. That's more than we've ever seen on a survey that came back to us. That was excellent. And you can see when you read through this, there are a lot of things that people had to say. And that was good. They shared a lot of information for you. So my job initially is to go through and just give you a very brief overview of what the survey said. And I do this for two reasons. One, it's kind of to set the tone so you can kind of remember what your thoughts were when you read this. And two, somewhat for the record, for the community so they can hear what was really pointed out in the survey to you. As you know, question one was simply what's your relationship with the district? And most of the folks, as always, that fill the survey out have an association in terms of a student or they work here, they're a staff member, whatever the case may be. And that's truly the case in this instance. Question two, what do you feel is important to you in the district? The question that, or the response that was most likely on this is, has experience motivating staff and students, improving morale, and generating enthusiasm. That's a characteristic they're looking for. When I go through this, and I'll stop there for a second, when I go through this, remember what I said last meeting, and that is utilize these comments from the community to start framing the questions that you have, to start framing not just necessarily a question specific to that, but at least thematic. That's what you're looking for. Also has experience evaluating and reorganizing staff. Leads but is willing to pitch in and help. So somebody's ready to roll up their sleeves and be part of the system. I want to make note for the record that in each one of these questions that I review, there's a lot of handwritten notes, typewritten notes that came in of people's thoughts. The next item, question three, not such a wide variety. You can see when you look at question three that the responses were not so varied, but the two responses that had more people check them than not was the ability to plan and implement continuous improvement in the organization. As you read through the document, and as I read through the document, that's something that came out in their comments. How do we take the organization and improve it? Not that there was improvement needed, but moving forward. Student achievement. Finance was a big point, which it would be in any district in the state at this time. How do we have that student achievement move forward? How do we have the community more involved? How do we work with our budget in the most effective way we can? What can we do? That's part of that organizational piece. And then also has experience leading schools and districts where student achievement has been increased. There again, looking for that student achievement. Question four, two clear things. Communicates transparently. They want somebody, and you could see this in the writing that they did. They feel in many instances comfortable that the communication has been relatively strong. Now, when I say that, you know, when you read this, you also saw comments that said, we could do better. So you have to weigh the two. But there were a number of comments that said somebody who really can help communicate and bring the message of the district to the community. And then, obviously, child-centered advocate. That's one that always pops up. Somebody who's looking to protect the students, to help generate everything they can to make the student experience in the public school as positive as possible. Question four, again, not such a clear delineation there. Three things popped out, though. Has success engaging the public. That's part of that communication piece. Successful experience in conflict resolution, trying to make sure that everybody's on the same page and get people on the same page. And is the face of the school district, somebody who steps out front, is recognizable, somebody who, when they see them, they say, I know who that is. That's superintendent. Question six, staff development, very specific here in terms of the responses. Has success recruiting, selecting, and retaining highly qualified staff. I didn't count up how many times this was mentioned in an individual comment, but it was throughout your document. It was throughout your document, one in terms of strengths and two in terms of challenges. A lot of people said that's a strength. It's a strength that the district has. We want to see it continue. But we also saw it as we need to improve. So as you read your document, this is one of the things that popped out more than anything else, and that is that idea of qualifying, getting qualified staff in, recruiting them, and having them stay. That retention was mentioned many times. Okay, item 7, decision-making. One item popped out, includes parent, staff, community, that involvement, that transparency. Being the face of the community and getting the community into the district, coming up with an action plan and with strategies where the community is here with you. Maybe not physically at all times, but they're part of the district and they feel part of the district. Item 8 was operational, and of course, the items that were checked there is make sure that we have an operation that is effective, make sure that we are financially strong. And of course, there, technology in the classroom was mentioned, procedures to assess improving district operations and support service was mentioned. All things that you're blessed with people within the system that help, but they want to see the superintendent engaged. They want to see the superintendent involved in such items. And then budget and finance, number 9. Again, you're blessed with a finance department, but the intent of the community by their response is superintendent has a handle on that. Superintendent understands budget and finance, understands how schools get funded, understands how to implement the monies that you have in the most effective and efficient way. The next questions that were posed didn't have those type of responses, didn't have a check mark type of response, but one was the strengths of the district and 2 were the challenges of the district. Again, for the community, over 2,000 responses to each one of those. That's huge. Some of the things I picked out of the strengths of the district was that the respondents feel you have a very strong staff, that they're dedicated to the students. They feel that there's a strong heritage in the district, something to build upon. For the most part, respect was mentioned, that the community respects the district, that the community stands behind the district. Students was mentioned many times. It was strong student base, strong group of youngsters that come here daily to receive an education. Professional development. That was an interesting one because we saw that not only in the strengths, but we saw it in the challenges. Professional development in terms of helping with curriculum, helping with instruction, helping make sure that assessments are where they need to be, bringing things together and making sure there's coordination. But also in the challenges, making it stronger. Kids first approach, that theme was throughout, I thought. How do we get kids first? How do we make them first? How do we keep them first? With all the things we have to do, with budget, with political things that crop up that are challenges for the district, how do we keep the kids first? Strong community was mentioned over and over. Good programs were mentioned. That there are good programs in the district. CTE was mentioned, transportation was mentioned, the arts were mentioned. Those are good things, but it also said in the challenges that we've lost some things. There's some things that have gone away, and you know that there's a parallel there, obviously, with finance. In terms of the things that were mentioned having to do with challenges, I've mentioned a few. Top 1, compensation. Expected that. Compensation. It's been rough over the last 7, 8 years. Been hard for any district to keep the pace with the economy. So compensation, program cuts, supplies, materials, maintenance of the district, building, getting new schools, overcrowded classrooms, all of that falls under finance. All that falls under what can we do with the money we have and how can we use it as the most effective way we can. And I will tell you, that's not a surprise at all. All of those things fall right into what I've seen with these surveys over the last 5, 6 years. They would like to see, in terms of survey, more strength in development. They're looking, the teachers are the ones I'm sure saying this, give us more, make it better, make it stronger, help us, give us all the tools that we need. Core curriculum, Common Core came up, not a surprise. That's That's on a scale, depending on who you talk to. Some people like it, some people don't. But that was part of what was mentioned. One of the things I do want to say for the community, obviously with 2,000 responses and to the pros and the cons, so to speak, and over 3,000 responses to the survey itself, you cannot, neither can I, mention everything that was said. But you had it, and I want the community to understand that you did see everything, that you have everything that was written, nothing was edited, nothing was taken out, so everything's in front of you. The intent now, you've read it, you've had a chance to review it, is to have a conversation about what you picked up. I think the conversation should result in kind of a twofold direction. One, as I mentioned earlier, you're looking toward the questions you're going to ask. You're looking toward what you're going to choose in a superintendent. This is part of the narrowing process that I've talked about before. The other thing is, once the new person is sitting in the chair, you're going to be looking at what you want them to challenge. What do you want them to do? Where are the things you want them to increase in terms of the effectiveness of the district? What do you want in terms of maintenance? A lot of that can come from this. An action plan can actually come from a lot of this work that the community did, and you can then talk with your superintendent, set new goals. Not that the old ones are wrong, but maybe enhance them, maybe change direction a little bit. That's really up to you, and a lot of that can come from this. So the conversation now in this agenda item is really yours to reflect individually and have a conversation. See if you can kind of begin to narrow your thoughts. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Highland. I'm so taken back by the number of responses in a good way. I was really expecting, 500 on a good day, just based on other school boards I've talked to, different events and whatnot. I know we're a different size, but that is amazing. And again, there was good comments, there were criticisms, obviously, but I'm glad that there was that much. That just shows a lot of interest and a lot of care. People who complain and criticize are still caring. They just want things to be better. They may say it in an odd way sometimes or a different way, but they mean it because they want things to be better and they want to be part of that betterment. So that's, I'm really encouraged by this. So I would start with Mrs. Doan. Work around, obviously it's our chance to talk, because ultimately, as Mr. Highland said, this has to boil down to a couple of things. What are the questions we're actually going to ask, because they have to be correctly documented. We're not just going to wing the questions. And then also, we'll help plan on, as they're looking through the different resumes that we get in, which one's going to pile A, B, and C, as was discussed before. So this is, critical to decide what that framework is for interviews as well. So start anywhere you want. This is our time to discuss what we saw, what we heard come off the paper, and how that frames what we're going to be asking in the future.
Like, how many questions are we talking about?
Don't look at it in terms of questions right now, because you're narrowing a focus. Look at it in terms of a focus. By a focus, when you read the comments, you read things like professional development. You know your professional development program, and your administration does much better than I do. Is professional development an area you think that you need to hone in on? If so, what are the expectations you might have? Before you begin the second step to maybe enhance it, you need to know where you're at now. And maybe you do know where you're at. Maybe you've had enough presentations by your administration to know exactly where you're at with professional development. Maybe you need more. But when you're looking at the other phase in terms of questions, is that an area you want to delve into? Is that an area that you're ready to delve into in an interview, asking a person about the effectiveness of professional development and what they believe can happen with professional development and how that can tie with other things, very simply, like teacher effectiveness and student achievement, and ask them how they would document that, and ask how they would bring the data forward to you, and what the role of the board would be in that process, not in the process of delivery, but in the process of helping set direction and getting the input from you, that, looking at those reports and saying, hey, this is working, or what can we do to make it more effective?
Makes sense.
So that's the type of global. So don't think about how many questions, don't think about the exact wording. We'll get to that later, next meeting, in fact. Today is just global. It's a 10,000-foot view of the themes in the direction you want to go when it comes to asking questions.
Well, I, for one, am very interested in finding someone that is good at listening to the needs of the teachers and, you know, being able to meet one-on-one with teachers and having good rapport and, you know, working out ways to solve those issues that we're having with curriculum and stuff, and open to new curriculum, if that's what, you know, if we do that, somebody that's not hidebound one way or the other particularly, but that will definitely work with the teachers on their issues and the stuff that's going on. I am so tired of these teachers having to buy their own products and do their own curriculum and stuff like that. I know we all are. And I'm, you know, maybe, you know, that could be a focus for us. Find somebody that can really take it all in and put it together and find some way to come up with a solution for that. That's interesting to me, because I want to get that off them. I don't want them to have to write their own curriculum. I don't want them to have to buy the products for the class, stuff like that.
And I'm going to echo that. I think resources is an absolute key. And as we all know, we're being faced with the potential of influx of funds coming in that we need to decide how we're going to spend, how we're going to divide, and so forth. I too would like to go down that direction of what plans might they have. I think the timing of everything is perfect to say, you know, what ideas do you have coming in with these potential funds, with these potential opportunities, and how would, you know, what is your direction? What would you like to see, and how would you tackle some of these challenges that we do have? Because I agree that the resources is a huge undertaking, something that we've talked about many times. It's very outdated resources that we have, and it is stuff that we need to bring to the table on a more global side of things. So let me back up and say, I too agree, love the number of responses. I think that was fantastic to see. Nothing horribly or crazy surprising in any of the data. I think it kind of reflected on a lot of what we've talked about here as a group, and it just kind of reaffirmed a lot of the directions that we're heading right now. So I think, you know, that kind of meshed with us. So main question would be a lot about the resources and pay and how to direct on that. I also want to focus on the retention side of things with the teachers. What plans do they have, or what might they see from what we've done so far? How can we modify, change in the future to ensure that we keep driving and retaining the top talent that we have, and grow and develop those who need some assistance along the way. So those are really the big key areas that I pulled out of it.
Makes sense. Ms. Kennedy?
Well, is this close enough? They keep nagging me about you being real close to the mic. Oh, there you go. Okay, so I think our next superintendent has to, like Dr. Santarelli, be able to balance a lot of things. And it's hard to be a little bit of everything, but I think the size of this organization, you need to have that. You need to be able to balance a lot of things. And as we read through the long list, you see the yin and the yang of so many things. I think this next and I'm a big picture person. I rely on some of my friends to be detail people, but you know, we need to be able to balance the traditions, the things that have worked, also with, you know, regardless of who comes in, is going to have fresh ideas, new ways of doing things, and we need to be able to have somebody who's willing to take some risks and try some innovation, even if it's not the way, you know, things have always been done. One of the things that popped up in different ways was teacher-centered or student-centered. I read a couple times frustration that things seemed top-down. So when we're talking to these individuals, I want to know, what is their focus? Where do they think the genesis of the magic that happens in our classroom comes from? Is it because we're tapping into the students and their passions? Is it because we're tapping into great teachers who've benefited from professional development and who are inspired and inspiring? Or is it coming from our site leaders who really have a knack of finding their staff members' strengths and capitalizing on that? So I really want us to be able to ask some questions that can zone in on where these people think the magic starts. I think community engagement, the expression used in here was the face of the organization. I think that's critical. Peoria, over several decades, has become a leader among school districts throughout the state. I fully intend and hope that we can maintain that position. We have amazing staff members at all levels who create and produce and push our kids to levels of achievement that is the envy around the state. And I think that is a long-term goal that we need to maintain that. Back to balance, we need somebody that can hire really excellent people, and we need somebody that can fire people that are not producing. And that's not an easy thing to do. I know a lot of people in this room have had to do that. That's not easy. Finally, I want somebody who believes in investment, whether it's investment of time, whether it's investment of resources, investment of energy. There is a mentality out there across all sectors that, you know, we can just do more with less, with less, and we have less. So I want to find creative ways to grow what we have, make more, invest in the time, because, you know, and I'm not just talking about money, but putting more in of whatever it is will reap better benefits, I think. So those are the kind of the big ideas that I had at first.
And I think you hit the nail on the head with the scalability of things, because, you know, as the leader of the organization, the face of the district, they do need to be able to impact change across all 40 schools and all different areas, but they're not going to be in all those different areas. So absolutely, the scalability of how they can impact their will to change or their will to improve is huge.
Mm-hmm. I want somebody who is absolutely a lifelong learner and who is learning him or herself about best practices across the state and being willing to bring some of those ideas here. We've had good experience taking risks, certainly on my tenure as a school board member. Not everything works, but when it does, it's exciting, and it validates us when we say we're innovative and creative as an organization, and I think that's something that needs to continue. So.
I noticed a lot of frustration with data collection, testing, data collection, and that. I wonder if, you know, if we can't explore the possibility of toning that down a little bit, because even the teachers are very frustrated. They say we're not getting enough teaching time in because we're always preparing for tests. And that's going to hurt the students if that's what's going on. So I think that would be a good area to explore as well.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's some fundamental philosophies of education that we need to make sure we understand where these individuals are coming from.
Yes.
How there again, you know, child-centered, student-centered, bureaucracy-centered, I don't know.
Well, and sometimes those words themselves are confusing because somebody can say it and mean one thing and somebody else can say it and same words and mean something else
Right.
entirely. So we need to get into the details on that.
And I would want to know this person's philosophy about integrating athletics, integrating arts, integrating, you know, what's the value of clubs, what's the value of, I mean, all those things. It sounds really personal, but you really need to know the heart of an individual for this kind of job.
Matt, what do you think?
What do I think? Many thoughts, and I will condense them. I think I'm limited to 2 questions, was it?
We got a 3-minute time.
Oh, 1. Right. It was interesting in all the, I probably read, I'll say 70% to be fair, of all the responses. just, going through them. I did a lot, that's why I wanted it in the PDF format, and thank you for providing that, because it allowed me to search. I had, 100 keywords I was searching for. That's the way I do it. I'm the analytical geek who wants to quantify numbers of why, how many times someone responds a certain way, and associating weights with that. And ultimately, there's emotion associated with it as well that you can't pull out by just searching key terms. But the 3 areas that stuck out most to me didn't surprise me, and I don't think this surprised anybody.
No.
It was hiring correctly, and it was funny. We always talk about attract and retain, and it didn't. And everyone's going to laugh at me because this is probably such a naive statement. After reading through it, I said, you know what? The issue really isn't attract and retain great people. It's teachers themselves saying we need really good coworkers because it makes our job easier. You know what I mean? It's different than just hire great people and retain them. Okay, doesn't every organization need to do that? It just sunk into me. That's what they're saying, is hire good people because it's going to make our school run better. It's going to be less time for us to train and less time and less problems at our school with all the things we're juggling anyway. So please, to make our job easier, hire better people or hire great people. Continue to hire great people. And if someone's not working out, to your point, then get rid of them. It's nothing personal, but maybe this isn't your career path for you. Again, let's shake hands and move on. That stood out heavily. Second thing that stood out heavily was take stuff off our plate. Again, nothing new. It's not everyone's go, where'd that come from? But again, it's interesting. It reminds me almost when we had the 4-day school week discussion. We had hundreds and hundreds of emails and comments and people speaking, and I loved it because everyone's involved and really getting into it and explaining what they did and didn't like about the concept. But really, after you read a couple hundred emails, it boiled down to a couple key things. People may say them differently, to your point, but it really boils down to a couple things. Take things off our plate. Now, what's interesting is that some things you can't take off their plate unless you happen to be a legislator or a federal bureaucrat or you want to change law. So the person that comes in obviously has to be able to demonstrate to us, how do you work within defined parameters that you really can't change? There are certain things, no matter how great Dr. Santarelli is, and I'm going to pick on you, you're very good. There's certain things you just can't do. There are certain things you can't change, no matter how amazing you are, you can't do it. Unless you decide to run for governor or state legislator and be one of 30 voices or 90 voices, then maybe. So we have to be able to be realistic on that. No, I'm not.
It's not a bad idea, by the way.
I think we're off topic, Mr. Bullock.
Yeah.
No, but the point being is that we have to be realistic in who we're looking for. Is that a lot of the responses that we got is, although they're great ideas, we really can't do anything about it. Now, it can't is a dramatic term. Yes, people made the laws, people can change them, but it's a far more involved process than one person coming in and waving a magic wand. So I want to be realistic in that part. There are no magic wands. Budget's another thing. There are creative ways to use isolated and reduced resources, and we can talk about what is something that you've done, Mr. or Mrs. Interviewee or candidate. What have you done in your district to take limited funds? Everybody, no matter what state you come from, even if you have, Chicago, New York, $25,000, $30,000 per student, they still have limitations in certain areas. What did you do to take limited resources and create twice as much opportunity? That's going to be interesting to me. Not how are you going to make more money. You can't. People here, we need more money, more money. Amen to that, sister. But it's not going to happen until we have legislative assistance, which they're working on. I'll give them credit for that. So the third thing that I see is when it comes down to education, you talked about curriculum. The third thing that boiled through was, how can the new superintendent assist with formulating and being ahead of the curve on new curriculum? Whether Common Core is fully nuked in Arizona, no matter what happens, we're at the receiving end of that. We don't make laws here in PUSD or any district for that matter. How will this new superintendent work with existing protocols and changes that happen to change every 6 months around here and work that in so we don't miss a beat? I remember we talked about our frameworks probably 2 years ago. I remember sitting in a study session and I asked specifically, what happens if Common Core is done away with? Are we dead in the water? And I forget, it was either Dr. Santarelli or Dr. Cruz, and it's irrelevant, but one of you two mentioned we have very modularized and scalable curriculum that tomorrow, if something went away and it was not Common Core, now it's Dave's curriculum, we could take what we have and turn very quickly to be ready for that. So we're not going to throw anything away, it's very good. It'll be some tweaks, but we're not starting all over from scratch. That's exciting. Last comment I'll make is whenever you look at a leader, in the business world especially, that's all I really know well, a great leader does a couple things really well. A great leader hires the correct people, that's key. He or she then gives them correct information and correct direction, then resources them correctly, gives them deliverables, and then number 5, gets out of their way. That's what a great leader does. And no matter how big the organization is, they scale those 5 points. But those 5 points are the key to success on any superintendent, corporate CEO, whatever it may be, government official. Those people are the ones that are successful. So I'm going to be looking extensively for 2 things. Someone who can tell me specifically, how have you implemented those 5 points of leadership and created success stories? I want to hear your success stories. Not like, yeah, I'm a great leader and I hired great. Okay, pick out one example for me of how you hired somebody correctly, you gave them correct direction, you resourced them correctly, you gave them deliverables, and then you got out of their way, and then what magic happened? Or what failed, and what did you learn from that? That's really key to me. And last but not least, we are at a big change in education. Again, not revolutionary, but you look at programs like the MET, for example, which, a great legacy piece for Dr. Senroy. That's, kudos to you and everyone else too. But it's an amazing piece. Education is changing dramatically, not so much of we need more money, it's changing how we deliver education dramatically. Whether a lot of people are going to be pulled kicking and screaming with the new way we deliver knowledge. We need somebody who can tell us specifically by example, what are 1 or 2 projects or programs that you implemented where you were able to actually move the needle in the direction of the way we're going to be delivering education. Whether it is the internship on steroids we call our Peoria Met program, whether it is other programs are banned, whether it is other internships, whether it is our sports programs, whatever it may be, we are delivering knowledge differently. What have you done in your district, programs to start being on the front end of where education is changing? Because a lot of people will talk to, I'm sure, are going to say, well, here's what I've done. It's worked for the last 20 years. I don't want to talk to that person. Nothing personal. I want someone to say, here's what I'm doing to be ahead of the curve of the way knowledge delivery has changed. And here is the success that we've had with it. That's important to me. A great leader and someone who is ahead of the curve and can demonstrate how they're going to take these wonderful programs we have and push them to not only make PUSD continue towards being the top 10 district in the United States, but also one that leads in the new way that we deliver knowledge. Those are exciting. That's what I hear, and that's what exciting things for me moving forward. So,
I want to know how this leader handles failure, and maybe we even ask them ahead of time to be able to tell us about a time when he or she failed, and let us know what they learned and how they handled it, and et cetera.
So then keeping with this particular topic of, again, the 10,000-foot view, to use Mr. Highland's term there, what other ideas do we have, whether it's feeling, whether it's qualifications or directions that we either want to see where they've come from or where they're going to take PUSD? Any other 10,000-foot view comments?
From a 10,000-foot view, I would say something, how they interact, their past experiences of interacting with the public, a lot of the community, maybe some challenging times, things that they were able to navigate their past entity through, maybe some encouraging, exciting times coming up. How did they, gauge and temper the excitement so they didn't get too far ahead and too ahead of themselves in a process, something in that regards. But more community-based, making sure that they keep the community involved, keep it transparent. I think that's one of the big things that we do very well here, and making sure that everyone understands what we are doing and what we plan on doing. Maybe some past examples that they've worked with in that.
It's interesting, we're in this age of social media and instantaneous gratification and access to information, and I see actually more and more and more of the public becoming less and less and less plugged in to the actual factors that create dynamic education. What I mean by that is we have now become strictly, it's just about taxes. That's it, and that's a component, of course it is. But all the other aspects of education, with all this knowledge, it's becoming harder and harder for a superintendent to be plugged in, to be able to tell everybody and teach and message to the point where everyone understands the reason for where we're going and how politics fits into it and how local community fits into it, how having lunch with the mayor fits into all these aspects, how they fit into it. So that's going to be key.
Yeah, I would like to know and find out how they worked with their community and how well they were able to find what their own community wanted and deal with that rather than just perhaps push their own ideas or whatever. Because I think as a district, we need to definitely be in touch with what the community here wants. I mean, that's why they put us here, you know, to serve their wishes, and we need to keep on top of that and make sure we don't lose touch with what the community wants, and make sure that our leader is also someone good at community relations, being able to find out what is desired by this community.
Right. I mean, and we have a couple other topics to do in our last, 18, 20 minutes. I mean, again, we obviously want to get this done. I'm not limiting it to just a certain amount of time, but is that, obviously this is not the only conversation about that 10,000-foot view. Does that give you enough, Mr. Hancock as well, enough to go, okay, I get the flavor?
It does, and it really isn't what it gives me, it's what it gives you. Because what you're looking at now is you've just narrowed that focus. Think about the things that you talked about initially when we established the pamphlet and what you were looking for. You've narrowed the focus significantly to this point. The next agenda item is going to be a homework assignment, and you're going to narrow it even further. What I heard from you is very similar to what I read in the document that you've been presented. 186 pages of input from your community. And what I heard is consistent with what I read, and that's good. In 2 words, you're looking for a pragmatic dreamer, somebody who understands that they can't change the world, they're working within parameters, but somebody who can dream of things and maybe make them happen, things that haven't happened yet. That's a good place to be.
Good, thank you. All right, you want to, go ahead.
One other thing, I think a lot about leaders and leadership sometimes, and it might help us as we're thinking about who we want to lead this organization, who are the leaders we admire? What are the qualities and the characteristics of the leaders, whether they're, political leaders, historical leaders, school leaders, whatever? What are the characteristics and qualities that we would look for? I think for me that helps frame the picture.
And I like your pragmatic dreamer. I'm going to add one more thing, a symbiotic relationship.
Item 2, if you're ready.
Yep, you bet. All right, so move on to item number 2. Well, actually, it's number 3 in ours, a presentation discussion of areas of emphasis to be covered in interview questions for the position of district superintendent.
Purpose of this is to narrow the focus a little further. I didn't give you this on purpose ahead of time because these are specific interview questions. These specific interview questions are not necessarily what you want to use, but it begins another phase in terms of framing what that last conversation was. This last conversation allowed you to discuss not only the survey, but your own thoughts. And again, your own thoughts were very consistent. But you've got to formulate that into a number of questions that are going to be specific to your thoughts and get from you, or get from the candidate what you need, because that's the purpose of the interview. So I hand this out at this point. Not all of these are things that necessarily apply. Not all of them work for you. But what they do is give you a little bit more of an idea of what could be asked and to begin to frame what you want to ask. Your homework assignment is this. The search for your new superintendent closes when we stop taking applications on March 11th. What I would ask you to please do is think about the conversation you had in the first agenda item. Think about what the community wrote. Think about their thoughts. Think about their ideas. Think about where they took you. Think about where you are as an individual. Now, start identifying more specifically what kind of questions you want. Your homework assignment would be really twofold. One, if you see anything on this list that you think is a good question, and not that it would look exactly like this when it went back to, when it comes to the interview, because I would customize it for Peoria. See if there's anything on this list. You'll notice the first area is district leadership. You talked a little bit about district leadership in the last agenda item. Talks about fiscal management. Talked a lot about that one. You talked about board superintendent relationship, but only a little. You didn't really touch on that too much. But that's an important component. What is going to be the relationship? What do you want it to be? What is your expectation?
Yeah, we need to.
The next one is student achievement, big topic, and then general questions, but as important, if you look at the very last page, and this is part of your homework assignment, governing board questions you'd like to have considered. You need to see what is in your mind, what you think is important, and if you don't pick anything on this list, if you don't say question number 60 or question number 35 is something you're thinking about, that's fine. But there is something in your mind that you need to write. And I would ask you to each come up with anywhere from 10 or more things on this list. Narrow it a little bit. Don't circle all 60. That doesn't narrow the process. But come up with 10 or 12, maybe 15 in those different areas, and your own thoughts on things that you think are important. Because, as I will cover in a few moments at the next agenda, next time we meet, we're going to come up with very specific things. So if you'll turn that in to Ms. McCarty on the 11th, by the end of the day, then she'll transmit those to me. I will take your responses, your thoughts, and the things you've circled, if you circle any at all, and I will come up with something that you will look at the next board meeting and begin to narrow it even further. So you can see what we've done. We've come from big concept items to a little narrower in the agenda item passed. Now at the next agenda, next meeting, in an agenda item, you're going to narrow them to specific questions that then I will write and have prepared for you. So that is item 2. That's your homework assignment, Mr. President.
We will take that, and we will not be staying after school, so let's all do our homework assignment. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, number 4, presentation and consideration of the direction of the Arizona School Boards Association and Peoria Unified School District Administration for the establishment of plans for the interview process for district superintendent.
Good evening.
Welcome, Ms. Airy.
Okay. Later on, after you have your screening session, you'll be inviting candidates in to sit and talk with you. This agenda item allows us to talk about how that's going to look. It can look virtually any way you want. But let me give you an idea of what, from my experience, works and I think gives you the beginnings of making a valid decision. The ability to sit and ask a question, as we just talked about, is a valid opportunity, not the only opportunity. My suggestion would be to you at the first interview that you do come up with questions, that you do formulate those, that we do have that conversation at the next meeting. But I would suggest that at least one of those questions is a stand and deliver question that I would deliver to each candidate that you're going to interview ahead of time. And they would make they would prepare for a presentation just as if they were standing before the board. I'll use one of your examples, not that this is a good example, but you mentioned community engagement. Your question could be very simple. Give us an action plan that reestablishes our communication with our community and community engagement in a much stronger fashion than it is today. And then after you've had this conversation of maybe 8, 10, 12, 15 questions, whatever comes out in the interview process, then they go immediately into a presentation. And that presentation would look just like a board meeting. They would stand up in front of you, they would present, they would have a PowerPoint presentation, they'd show you their action plan, they'd talk to you about the justification of that action plan, where it would make a difference, how it would make a difference, when it would make a difference. You would fire back questions, just as you do here with Dr. Santarelli or anyone else presenting. Yes, but how does that affect this? How do we extend that into every one of our communities? We have communities that are growing. We have communities that are losing population. How do we engage them all? How do we make sure that this approach that you have covers the entire district? We are a unified district. That gives them an opportunity to show you how they would present, how they would bring some, and gives you an opportunity to look for the face of the district. Is this the person that we want there? So that'd be phase one in the interview process. That's what I would project if that's to your liking. Phase two, we've talked, or I've talked with administration about a community meeting. And then we would have a community meeting, and at that community meeting, the people you invite, and maybe you don't invite all the people that you interview. We won't know that till we get to that point, because this has to be fluid now. We can't say, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, because you don't know who you're going to see and how they're going to respond. So let's say you choose to interview 8 people. But in that interview process, we'll set the agenda up so you can make a determination. Are you going to invite all 8 of those folks to the community meeting to stand up in front of the community? Or have you narrowed it just during that process to maybe the top 4 or 5? Or maybe you bring them all back. And then we have a community meeting, and we've talked about that community meeting. We go to one of your high schools, I think Centennial was mentioned, and we advertise it, district advertises it. We get folks there, we try to fill the building, have an opportunity for those people you invite to the community forum to introduce themselves and to answer questions from the community. Questions would come in on cards, be given to me, and I would ask a question. The reason I do that is because there's certain things in an interview and in this process you cannot ask. And we don't need somebody, honestly, to come to the microphone and say, tell us what church you go to. Can't do that. So they come to me, I read them. Like to see students ask questions. So I come with 3 color cards: staff, parent, community members, students, and then if I see a student card, I want to get that one in there. I want to make sure the students are heard. I think that's an important thing. And I want to make sure a fair representation of parents and staff are heard. So I try to mix those. Generally, that process goes anywhere from an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. We don't want it to get old. And then there's an opportunity to mingle, because people like to come up and just say hi to these people that are interviewing and that are candidates. And the candidates need to get out in the audience and say hi to them. Why is that important? It's important because you're there. It's not a board meeting, but you're there and you can see what the engagement looks like. If I'm one of the candidates and I spend my time talking to only one person for 45 minutes, not particularly engaging. But if people are coming up to me and I'm engaging them and I'm talking to them and I'm working with them and they're moving to another candidate and that tells you something else. Are they making that connection? Do they look like the face of the community? So they're interfacing with the community, you're getting to see it, they're answering questions from the community, you're getting to hear it. And then there's comment cards. At the end, people can fill out a comment card. Those comment cards come back to me. The next time we meet, which I don't have the date in my head, but I think it's 2 days later, those comment cards are there. We'd have them here in the building also if you wanted to come early and look at them individually. Then in a executive session, you'd have a chance to look at the comment cards, read through that, see what the people say. And what I generally see comes back is, wow, you got a tough decision, all the way to hire the big tall guy, something like that. You never know what they're going to say. But it gives you an idea, it gives you a flavor of what the community saw, and you get a flavor by looking at them. So that'd be phase 2, okay? Phase 3 would be once you saw those comment cards, once you met again, narrow the process now to the absolute finalist. How many would there be? Again, we don't know. Could be 1, could be 2. And then do a second interview process with them. Bring them in again and have even more detailed conversation. Begin, as you hear when your administration talks about data, you're drilling it down. You're drilling down those comments, those questions. You're getting more from them. You're seeking everything you can from that person during that time. That'd be that phase. At that point, the suggestion would be that maybe then we have some leadership committee meetings with leadership committees, and I would depend on the district and the staff at the district to be part of that framing who those people are, bringing them in. The exact time could be before you have that second interview, could be after. We'll have to think through that. But having to have those folks, whether there's 2, 3, or 4, sit down and interface with community and district leadership in a roundtable type of a setting. Board members maybe are there, but it's not a board meeting. It's one of those things where you're observers again. Okay? With that, then, you have the opportunity then to go in and see if you're ready to make a decision. Would you like to add, I know you have a question. Would you like to add something? Are you ready? You ready? Okay.
So that leadership committee would maybe be somebody from the city of Glendale and city of Peoria, maybe some key parent leaders, maybe some teacher leaders, that kind of stakeholder
Absolutely.
groups would be represented in that leadership committee meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. That's something I think would be very important.
So that's what I've talked about with administration to this point, first time you've heard it. Is that, if that is a good direction, then we would begin to meet and put that together in a fashion that we would bring back to you at the next meeting so that you would see clearly what we're projecting.
Good.
And if
Thank
there
you.
are things we've missed, please advise us.
Well, the two words that pop in my head is balanced and logical. What I mean by that is your process is it's balanced because you're taking all stakeholders and giving them equal weight, from students all the way up to community leaders, mayors, whoever wants to be involved, staff members. It's equally balanced, and it's logical because it has a natural progression. It's that funnel concept you talk about, and that's it's a standard interviewing process to whittle everything down. But there's very little room for either exposure on our part, showing favoritism, asking questions with one person, not to another. It really protects the board, but yet gives us a lot of detail and a lot of feedback. And I'm going to be really interested to see the community meetings and interfacing with different executive team members and different stakeholders, see how they interact. Because that's when you see the face. We can sit down with an interview with 2 people. You can tell me anything you want. You can look any way you want. But when you have a lot of interaction with unknowns, that's when your real characteristics, your traits, your personality comes out. So I think this process is very balanced and logical, which I think will yield the correct person and also have everybody going away saying, well, it may not have been the person that I chose, but I understand it makes sense. You want to be, there's so many, the only thing that scares me about all the responses is that how many people are now getting very involved. And if we don't have a clean, logical, well-weighted, transparent process, there's going to be repercussions, I think. That's my personal opinion. So this is an action item, too, so we're going to be voting on this. So any questions, you can direct that way, too.
Yeah, I think all this is really fantastic. I think there's one part, I know we've talked about it in the past, and I just want to make sure that it keeps staying at the forefront, is I know we're interviewing somebody to take over this role, but at the same time, they're interviewing us. They're trying to make the right fit for themselves as well. So I just want to make sure that as we're looking at these processes, as we're looking at all these different steps, opportunities for them to truly truly gauge what they're getting into and how they'll fit in and make it a equal side vision, if you will.
One of the things that we've talked about that we might work in also is an opportunity to tour the district. Go out and talk to some folks
Yeah, that's
and see.
critical.
We need to work through it. We need to sit and do some planning. Is there any comments you have related to what I projected in terms of the first interview, where it is a question answer and then a stand and deliver approach with one formulated question that you come up with that they have ahead of time that they prepare for and provide that? Is that something that sounds good to you?
I think it does because, quite honestly, we talk about face of the district. That's fine. That's a comment or that's a trait. It's very ethereal. However, someone that can present very well to a group, logically getting the point across, questions answered, whatever. I'm gonna get back to you on that. Whatever it is, that's critical because if they can't present, if they can't communicate in a board setting, they're gonna have no chance out there talking. I mean, Dr. Cruz, Dr. Senderly, all of you have been out there in hostile situations or situations where people just aren't getting it or understanding it. There's a lot of misunderstanding. If you can't present well, then you're going to fall flat in your face when it comes to in the trenches day to day. So that makes complete sense.
And I'm guessing Dr. Santarelli will back me on this. a lot of your job is still being an educator to people, correct?
No question. Yep. Teaching.
All
training,
day, every day.
Presenting. Good. Any other comments or questions? Seems good. Then I'll go ahead and move this. I'll move that we approve approve the direction of the ASBA and administration regarding the development of plans for the interview process and community meeting. Have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Moved by myself, seconded by Mr. Johnigan. This is an action item, so board members, please cast your vote for the direction. Okay. Thank you very much. Go forth and conquer. 4-0.
We shall.
Thank you.
1 absent. And next item on the agenda, last part of this study session, item number 5, presentation and discussion of next steps in the district superintendent hiring process, including agenda items for the special board meeting and executive session scheduled for March 21st, 2016. This is an info item, not an action item.
We've touched on this a little bit, but the primary purpose of being there is to screen candidates. We'll screen candidates, we'll talk about the interview process, you will formulate your final questions, we will report back to you on the interview process, dates specific, and how we're going to lay it out and all the different components. We'll meet before that and have it all lined up for you. This meeting, I want you to know, typically runs 3 to 6 hours. I've been in them where they've lasted 8. Because this is where, you remember the old Armstrong tire commercial? Where the rubber meets the road. This is where the decision-making really begins, because now you're going to be looking at those folders of the applicants and what they've projected, and you're going to be put in the position of saying yes, and you're going to be put in the position of saying no. Someone mentioned earlier at this meeting, we need somebody strong enough to hire, and we need somebody strong enough to dismiss. You're going to be bringing people in, and you're going to be dismissing people through this process. So this is going to be a difficult time, so it's not one we want to rush through. So I can't tell you how long it'll take. I was in one on Monday. We started at 8:30, we finished at 2. So it's going to be a long day, and it's going to be a stressful day, but those are the things we're going to be talking about. And look forward to it, because it is a lot of fun.
Well,
It's just,
that's what we
it's a
signed
tough
up for.
meeting.
That's what we signed up for, so we're okay. As long as there's pizza, we're good.
Coffee,
Pizza,
coffee.
orange juice. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mixed nuts.
Mr. Bullock, if I could, just for clarification's sake, I believe that was tentatively scheduled for an 8 a.m. start, is that correct?
That's up to you and the board.
Is that here?
I
the
believe we have
21st.
that scheduled for here. Ms. McCarty, are you there? Did we tentatively set that for 8 a.m.? We did. Okay, just to make sure that works for everybody.
March
8
21.
a.m. on the 21st.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break to reset and get ready for our regular meeting.
Are you going to be in tomorrow?
Thank you.
I'll call you so that we can set a time when I can come over and we can meet a little bit and kind of go through and make sure we're on the same page. It won't take us long. We know, I think we know what we're going to do. Yeah, we know what we're going to do. We just need to be able to present to them. Here's exactly how it's going to play out. We'll need you in there for that part. They invite who they want to do to screen. Generally, it's them and me. Yeah. Generally, it's them and me. And then after
Okay, we're going to start in about 2 minutes, if that's okay. Thank you, or less than 2 minutes.
You're gonna come right over here, okay? And you're just gonna look right
They're setting it up.
You'll be great.
Ready, now we're ready. All right. Being here, we're going to go ahead and get started. We had a slight technical difficulty, and due to our dependence on technology, we couldn't start, but now we can because technology is working. So I'll officially use my Thor hammer to start our meeting. Now it starts. All right, thank you very much for being here tonight. We're going to go ahead and start our first part of the meeting. As we always like to start with a moment of silence. Gives us about 30 seconds if you could stand and join us to kind of gather our thoughts. And then we're going to move into our Pledge of Allegiance tonight by Davin O'Donnell from our wonderful scout troop here tonight.
I pledge allegiance of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Davin. Awesome. Before we get started, I want to go ahead and recognize that board member Mrs. Beverly Pengarelli is not with us tonight. She's excused with a family illness, so we wish her the best and hope to see her back soon. So I remembered. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is always our favorite part, staff recognitions. Mrs. Airy, thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening, President Bullock, members of the board, Dr. Santarelli. As you know, tax credit contributions play a very important role to help fund extracurricular activities throughout the Peoria Unified School District. Arizona tax law allows individuals to make up to a $200 donation and those filing jointly to make up to a $400 donation. The donors then may be eligible to receive a return on their taxes. Just as we've offered in the past, there are a number of ways that our community can give, and we continue to look for additional ways to increase those donations to help fund some of those very vital extracurricular programs at our district. Now, we always like to report to you what we have as a total for the previous tax year, and we have had some changes, as many of you may know, to the tax law that can extend the giving for last year through a portion of April. But to date, we thought we would bring you our totals for 2015. Now, I'll tell you that 2015 was not our highest year as a district. However, it was the second highest. So it was still a pretty incredible return. And I'm very pleased to announce that our grand total for 2016, $1,635,747 This is 59,000 more than last year's total. So we are very, very pleased and so incredibly thankful to our community for their support. And our community deserves a round of applause. Tidbits about our collection for last year. Typically mirrors pretty similar year over year, but our highest schools for those returns, probably no surprise, are high schools that have a lot of extracurricular programming as compared to our elementary schools. Centennial, Liberty, and Sunrise Mountain bringing in our highest totals. Top 3 elementary schools this year, Oakwood, Vistancia, and Sunset Heights Elementary School. Just as in pretty much every other year, our kindergarten program brought in the highest activity in tax credit donations, collecting more than $452,000. So again, we would just like to extend a huge thank you to our community. We are very grateful and very appreciative to them for their support. And while it is not a record year, something to be very, very proud of in our district. So a big thank you to our community.
Ms. Airy, also without, and I know I speak for the board, thank you to you and your staff, because yes, the community, of course, they deserve the highest praise for helping out, but how tirelessly you work in your department to message it, because it's, how many people don't know about it. Every year, more and more people learn that opportunity, that you can actually divert or direct some of your tax dollars to a specific program that you're very passionate about, maybe your child's involved or grandkids involved with, or you just like at your school. And so the only way that becomes such a wonderful hot topic is because you and your team message it so well. So thank you from us. I mean, over $1 million, that's amazing. That's going to help so many programs that maybe don't see the light of day with the big budgets that academics get sometimes. I know band helped, sporting events were helped, arts programs were helped. All those other programs that are so critical. So thank you from the bottom of our heart for making that possible, because if you didn't message it as well as you do, that number wouldn't even be half what it is, I believe. So thank you.
Well, thank you, President Bullock, for that recognition, but I have to give all the credit to Mrs. Dunsey, who takes primary responsibility for overseeing the communications for our tax credit contributions. She's here this evening, so big thank you to Mrs. Dunsey.
Deflecting that, good.
I have a question, Mr. Bullock. So, Mrs. Airy, is the high level of donations at the kindergarten level because that could be utilized to offset tuition?
President Bullock, Mrs. Connect, that's correct. So many of those do choose to apply that to our kindergarten academy, which, as you know, did have a fee for it going forward, thanks to the support of our community, again, for passing our recent override. That will no longer have a fee. So it is expected that we would see our tax credit donations go down next year, because many of those kindergarten parents wouldn't be necessarily applying it towards kindergarten.
However, what a great opportunity to highlight some of our other fabulous programs in which our kindergarten parents might want to invest.
You're absolutely right, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you very much.
I think we should have I'm going to call it the PUSD Community Education Reinvestment Act.
I like
where you
it.
can direct kindergarten money now to a program that will invest in your child's future educational objectives and goals to make sure that program is available to them.
I like it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any more?
I was just checking to see if there are any other questions.
Okay, good.
Very
This is our favorite part, you know that. So, Dr. Santarelli, anything for us tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Bullock, and good evening to everyone, and certainly a special welcome to our scouts. I have a number of recognitions, and pretty exciting. As you know, every board meeting we like to share wonderful accomplishments. Tonight, I'd like to announce that Michael Davey, a student at Park Ridge Elementary School, who was the runner-up in our district spelling bee, actually won the regional spelling bee that just took place in 19 rounds. And he will be representing in the state competition, which is coming up in March. So pretty exciting for Michael. Congratulations to him. Also, in February, ASU is working towards expanding recognition for young women in the areas of STEM. And one of the things that they have recently involved themselves in is a celebration of mathematics, and they called it Infinite Possibilities. And so young women from across the state had opportunities to interact with engineers and professors and the likes in the STEM fields. But to culminate the activity, they had a mathematics competition. And lo and behold, a Peoria High School freshman, Allison Adolph, captured the gold medal, beating out students from all over the state of Arizona. Congratulations to Allison. Not to be outdone, as you know, this is the time of year where the presidential scholars are announced, and you may recall that they select 161 seniors from across the country for this prestigious recognition. And as you know, these trickle out this time of year, and we already have one winner from Sunrise Mountain High School, Aaron Yoon, Presidential Scholars recipient for this year. So congratulations. And he will be going to Washington, D.C. in June, by the way, as part of that recognition. A couple of more on the athletic field. The National Football Foundation also recognized a couple of Cactus High School's athletes. Scholar athlete was Preston Guerra, and honorable mention, Andrew Kegel. So congratulations, a familiar name for many of us in the room, so congratulations to Preston and Andrew Kegel. Not to be left out in relationship to the arts. Arizona's 2016 Scholastic Art and Writing Competition just came to an end, and we actually had 6 students that took honors in that competition. Gold Key, Sophia Garcia; Gold Key, Rachel Crane; 2 Silver Key, Ilana Bazin and Matthew Griswold; and honorable mention, Skylar Mitchell and Leah Johnson. So congratulations to these fine art writing students. And we have a staff member that was recognized at the Arizona Music Educators Hall of Fame event, which recently occurred, and it goes to the principal of Peoria High School, Mr. Paul Bauer. He received a very prestigious award for his support and advocacy for arts education. So congratulations, Mr. Bauer.
Nice.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanderelli. Mr. Panzer, you must be happy with all the art awards and movement of the program that you're driving and your staff, so thank you very much again for your hard work, too, and your staff. All right, next item on the agenda is board recognitions. Now, I'm gonna take this one first because I have invited these good-looking young men here in Scout uniforms. I used to be their, not theirs, but in the previous Scout Master, so that's why they're in Cub Master, so it's near and dear to my heart, and so invited them there this week, but not just to see us, of course, but they're actually here for a specific reason. So awesome, always great to see Scouts. So if you'd like, I'm actually going to invite up 2 of the Scouts I asked ahead of time to come up and kind of tell us why they're here tonight. And obviously a big, we'll call it cornucopia, there you go, of Scouts. Look that guy's up when you get home. Cornucopia Scouts is here for a specific reason. So go ahead, we've got Cade Cannon and Landon Anderson asked to come up and limit to 2 questions, of course. So first of all, thank you all for being here tonight. This is very exciting. All right, Cade. There you go. See, always helping each other. That's why I love Scouts. Cade, why are you and the other Scouts here tonight?
We came to learn more about our community and the school board for a merit badge,
Which merit badge is that?
citizenship in the community.
Good. Okay, now is this one of the last things you have to do, or you still have a lot left to do on this one?
One of the last things.
Okay, good. All right, and then what's the last thing I asked you? What's one thing that you've learned tonight already in the whole 45 minutes you've been here?
Money.
Yes, the Scouts got here early, and they were here at our study session before we were talking about some of those budget aspects. So, good. Okay, I'm glad the marketing and advertising is getting to you. Good. Okay, Landon, I asked Landon a question. Scouts, obviously, the reason we love Scouts so much is because it not only it's great for young men on the Boy Scout side, but it's also great for education. So, can you give us an example? How does scouting and education go together? Kind of a generic question, but let me know what you think.
Well, I was thinking about this question, and I'm a great student, obviously. But as a student, we need to know how to respect and be self-reliant. respect our teachers, and in Scouts we learn a lot about being self-reliant and respecting others and being helpful to other students and our friends.
How often do you guys meet?
Every Wednesday,
Okay, so once a week you're learning this, so good. All right, so teaching your respect, which is key. If you look at principals and teachers and everybody in this room, they love that word, respect. And if it permeated our schools, boy, would we even be better than we are now. So, but thank you for doing that. Fellow board members, any questions for this dynamic group here who has come just to see us tonight?
Well, no, it's great to see you. I won't say how many years ago, but I too wore that uniform. No, it wasn't the original one, but yes, it was a few years back. You know, one of the big things that I remember from Scouts was, of course, all the badges and so forth, but also learning to help your neighbors, learning to help others. And I'm just wondering if there's any situations where you've had to use this in the day-to-day school environment where someone may need some help that didn't ask for it, but based on what you learned in the Scouts, you just kind of took the initiative and reached out and helped somebody.
as a Scout, we learn to see who needs help, and so at school, if somebody's having trouble and they don't they're too scared to ask, we I can go see, and if I know they need help, that's what I can help them with. Kate?
Well, usually I can notice a student is struggling during classes, maybe with homework or focusing, so we can, as Scouts, can come and help them with their homework or what they need to learn.
Excellent, excellent.
I'm curious, gentlemen, are you all from the same school? Are you from multiple schools?
We all go to different schools. There's some that go to PTS. I go to Zuni Hills, Glendale Prep, Sunset Heights.
Okay, it's a big troop, right?
Covers the whole, yep, up by Lake Pleasant area, so.
I speak Girl Scouts, but it's troop for Boy Scouts too, right?
It's just troop. It works either way. Very
Right,
good, yeah.
gotcha. Thank you for joining us tonight, gentlemen.
Yes, thank you for being here, and I just wanted to ask you if any of you are interested in being teachers. Or maybe on the school board.
I'm going to say yes just to please you.
You
but-
you had to sit through that boring meeting, right? So now you're not interested. I just want to tell you, it's not all like that. Sometimes it's pretty exciting, but yeah, it's a lot of, you guys have a lot ahead of you to choose from and look forward to, and, you know, learning the discipline that you do in the Scouts is a good way to get where you're going. So I appreciate you all coming out here.
And too bad you're not 18. We got an election coming up this November. A couple seats available. Sorry, guys. Maybe next time. All right. Well, thank you very much for being here. And I know you guys have other things to do, Scouts, and thank you to their leaders for being here as well and bringing them here. And we will look forward to seeing you again sometime. And thanks for representing and helping me to show how important Scouts are. And thanks for what you do. So have a good night, gentlemen. I know you got to get going. So yes, goodbye. And the room gets reduced by 50%. Now, if you know, this side of the room is very, very lonely. I know that you two are very confident. I get that. But if anyone wants to go over to that side to kind of, help them out, make them feel welcome, now is your chance. Let's move on to the next item. Okay, sorry, I tried. All right, next item on the agenda is request to address the governing board regarding matters not included on the agenda. Mrs. McCarty, anything that's not an agenda item tonight for speakers? Okay, great. And again, just so you know, and people watching, streaming as well, this is a chance, if you're going to speak, it has to be about a specific agenda item, and you're welcome to speak on that. This part, before we start really our agenda, is a chance to speak about anything that concerns you. Get your 3 minutes to tell us anything, and a lot of times great agenda items have come from people coming and just speaking about something that we weren't even thinking about. So please take this time to let us know how we can improve, what we're doing great, ideas maybe other districts do. So please use that time. We encourage you. All right, next item on the agenda is address agenda and consider adoption or recommended changes. And this, again, is just a chance for us board members, if we want to rearrange the agenda at all, maybe move something up because someone's waiting to speak or whatnot. Any agenda rearrangement tonight?
Guest speakers.
No. All right, so we'll move on there. That's an action item, so we have to vote to accept the agenda. Does anyone like to move that to a vote?
I move to approve the agenda as written.
Okay,
I'll second.
great. Moved and seconded. Agenda, or action item, please cast your vote. Okay, awesome. Unanimous. We will move on with the evening. All right, on to number 12, discussion and recommendation for addressing growth in the Sunset Heights Elementary School and Liberty High School attendance area. Mr. Steve Savoy, thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you, President Bullock. Well, good evening, President Bullock, members of the board, Dr. Santarelli, guests. Thank you for having us here this evening. I'm here this evening to talk to you about Sunset Heights and Liberty High School. If you may recall, we were before you in November talking about enrollment and trends and projections for the future. And I recall the board saying, Mr. Savoy, it looks like you might have some work to do. You may want to head up to that area of the district and take a look and see what you can bring back to keep the board informed with some sound decisions that can support those areas. So that's why we're here tonight. As you may well know, and I know many of the folks in our audience, as you drive into that area up Deer Valley Road and beyond along Happy Valley heading out to the farther reaches of our district, you see a lot of yellow construction tractors and trucks, and things are happening. So we know there's a pressing need, and so we did work on that. In addition to that, I just thought I'd share with the board, because I think for some of you, you may not have been with us in 2012, 2013. And that's another great example of the board working with the administration in this building and looking at projections and enrollment trends for the future, and ask the same question. K-12 administration, could you please go out and take a look at what's happening at our northern end? And in that time, 2012, 2013, we worked with community committees, and we came back with a recommendation that impacted 9 schools. We changed the boundaries at 9 schools to meet that demand that was happening, and we also constructed Sunset Heights Elementary. And I share that with you just as a point of reference, that it appears that every 4 years, major things are happening. And I think as you hear this evening, that may be the story once again. I do want to share with the board, this is a two-pronged approach in one presentation. Myself and a very large team of folks that helped a great deal from research and planning, and Miss Wendy Davy, as well as Dr. Cruz and Miss Bridgewater, with their assistance. We met with 2 separate groups, or committees, I might say, one from the Sunset Heights area and one for Liberty High School. And so each of those particular committees addressed those specific questions and worked to find solutions for those schools. You'll see that the Liberty Group, we were able to complete our task in 2 community meetings. Sunset Heights, we had 4 committee meetings. The last meeting on there, I think, is important and significant, is that we sent out an invitation to the entire community of Sunset Heights. We have some recommendations tonight that we knew would impact a good deal of people. And so what we decided to do was to meet with the community at large. We had close to 75 folks show up that evening and share their feedback with the committee recommendations. And we feel that was a valuable use of our time, and I feel as though that we can share that with the board as well. If you're a person here from Sunset Heights, I know that Principal Connolly is here with us this evening, but members of our committee, if you could please stand. We do have some parents here from the Sunset Heights Committee and staff members. I'd like to give them a round of applause for their work. I also know that a couple committee members phoned me earlier today. They're not feeling well and were not able to be here. I do want to make a quick comment about the formation of the committee. We asked Principal Conley to survey her community at large if there was anyone interested in being on the committee. She had just over 25 respondents, and the committee at the end was formed with 13. What's significant about the formation of the committee is it represents people that work at the school, it represents people who live in the community of Sunset Heights, as well as folks who have chosen to enroll at Sunset Heights, both within the Peoria Unified School District on open enrollment and folks who live outside of the Peoria Unified School District on open enrollment. And all of those folks were represented on the committee, so we wanted to hear a balanced voice. I'm going to get into the data a little bit on the next few slides. A lot of this you've seen, so I'm going to go through this rather quickly. But what it did is it formulated our recommendations that we're bringing before the board tonight. So what I'll start with is our enrollment projections out to 2020. And this is the work from Ms. Davy and her team. You've seen this information before, but we are projecting that within the next 3 to 4 years, we'll be over 1,200 students. The school is built for just about 1,000. It can go a little bit over, but not a whole lot. And so we know that based on the growth and the building that's happening in that area, our projections are telling us if the economy stays as it is and things continue to trend, we will certainly exceed the capacity of Sunset Heights. This is a graphic representation. What I'll point out quickly to you is that the blue outline represents Sunset Heights Elementary boundary as it is today. And what is significant about that is all of those blue dots represent students who attend Sunset Heights. And you'll see that there's some blue dots outside of that boundary line. Those are an example of students there on open enrollment. The other significant piece on this map are the green areas and the gray areas. The green areas are currently under construction. Homes are being built and are being sold. And so we have data in the bottom left table that shows the number of students that we're anticipating coming in from those homes. The two gray areas, the meadows to the north section, nothing is happening there yet, but we do anticipate over 500 homes being built in that area once it does go online. And I know that Mrs. Davy and her department are tracking that realistically on a daily to weekly basis. The other gray areas that you see, state of Arizona, represent state trust land. So currently there are no plans for that, but it could change quickly. This chart here in your presentation is really sharing the numbers. What's significant there is overall, when that whole area is built out, it's 981 homes with an anticipated elementary enrollment of 474. But it doesn't all happen at once, and you know I want to share that with the board. It doesn't happen next week. It's over a period of time. And that's what was fun about working with the committee is you bring a lot of folks together and you spend the first couple meetings really digging into the numbers, the big picture, talking about definitions and understanding all what is happening to help us inform our decisions. This chart, I'll just quickly share with the board. The significance of this table is when you see the yellow section, that's representing the months of next school year. At the bottom of that column, you'll see numbers such as 4, 6, 10. Those are the projected new enrollments from those homes being sold next school year. You'll see, if you move to the right, the blue section, that is the following school year and the additional students that would enroll. What's significant is if you go to the bottom of the table, you see the red boxes. The first red box is if we make no changes at Sunset Heights, we'll exceed our capacity really at the start of next school year. So we know we need to make some changes initially to be prepared for next school year and to maintain through the school year. One of the recommendations that you'll hear in a few moments is to not renew out of district currently students on open enrollment. If we were to do just that, that will get us through, we'll hit capacity about the middle of the year. So the committee recognized we may need to do a bit more than that. And then you can see if we look at capacity on an annual basis for Sunset Heights and consider not only out-of-district open enrollment, but students who are on open enrollment from within the boundaries of the Peoria district, we'll be able to manage it to get us out for the next couple years. And again, this is if all of this trends accurately. And I apologize if I went through that fast, but I was trying to just orientate you to that slide. What's significant about this slide, and the board has seen this before, is this is what next year Ms. Conley is planning for her school, 37 homerooms for elementary students. We know that she can handle that at this current count and where we've staffed, because this year she's using 38 homerooms, but we know that we've maxed out in a couple of these grade levels as well, and so it's close. This table shows you the open enrollment. And as you look at this, one of the things I want to share with you is this is December 2015. So that means when you look at the 8th grade, that's this year's current 8th graders. So we don't really want to pay attention to that number, that whole column, because all of those students will leave in May. So really what you're looking at is the 7th grade column will be next year's 8th graders, 6th graders will be 7th graders, and so you get an idea. It's approximately 270 students on open enrollment. Adding that pretty fast in my head. Actually about 235, 240. These are the recommendations from the committee, and I'm not sure, President Bullock, how you want to handle this, but I will share these recommendations with you. And this would then conclude my section on Sunset Heights. I do know that we have folks here from the Sunset Heights community. And then there's another section of about 4 or 5 slides for Liberty. I don't know if you want to separate that. I'll leave that up to you, but I will quickly just go through the recommendations. Would that be okay, President Bullock?
Great, and I would like to split it up because they are
Okay.
two different worlds, so thank you.
Very quickly, this was a lot of work. We met over 4 periods of time. We met on Tuesday evenings from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. We were pretty good about sticking to our time. The last meeting, we went pretty close to 9 because we wanted to be able to wrap up and bring some recommendations together. Currently, Sunset Heights is closed to all open enrollment at the current time and has been since October. The recommendation from the committee is that students who currently attend Sunset Heights right now on open enrollment who live outside of the Peoria district, so their home school may be in the Deer Valley district or Dysart, et cetera, that they would not be renewed next school year. The school will use the policy, as all of our schools do, on an annual basis to look at any students who may not be holding up their end of the bargain, so to speak, with attendance, grades, or behavior, and those students would not be renewed. We don't anticipate a large number from that. Ms. Conley reports that, our students at Sunset are meeting those 3 criteria typically, but there may be, less than a half dozen. The district would also look at, and the district would do this, what we would do is then we would look, after we remove the out-of-district students, then what we would determine is there capacity at every grade level. And so, for instance, right now at 4th grade, we have 3 homerooms, we have 105 students. They're at the max point, 35 students in every class. So in that case, we would say, we really don't have capacity for all those students. So what we would do is we would take any student who's on open enrollment, we would remove them from that total count, see what our balance is, probably bring us up to a number of 30 a class, and then wherever that number is, we would put the names in a hat and draw. And that's how our policy works. And we would do that at each grade level, and we would do that prior to April 1st, because we have to notify our families by April 1st what their status is for next school year. One of the things that we did hear from the community was they had some concerns about some particular recommendations, but they also wanted to be notified. If this is going to happen, please let us know sooner than later. Policy requires by the first Friday in April. So that would mean that folks like myself, Ms. Bridgewater, Dr. Cruz, we would determine that capacity, pull those names, put them in a hat, draw them out, create a waiting list, and kind of do that by grade level to keep our number down below the max. Also, the administration would look at open enrollment policy, particularly in the area of capacity. There was a feeling from the committee that our staff members who work in the district, that we want to clarify that language to ensure that staff members' children have a higher consideration and capacity was one of the recommendations. There were many others, really just to kind of clarify the language. And then lastly, you keep thinking, well, if we go do these committee meetings, we'll do it for a few months and then we'll be done. But the committee is recommending that we would get together again next year particularly depending on what happens with the Citizens Bond Committee, and look at changing boundaries, particularly on that map that you saw, some of those gray areas, as those homes come online. Maybe we could take a look at that before people move in there and make adjustments. But boundaries could impact other schools, and so we as a committee felt like we shouldn't make any boundary changes without those other schools being represented. We know that our board, you want us to get feedback, you want us to meet with the community, and I know that you wouldn't want us to make a change without talking to those other communities. So I'll stop there, President Bullock, unless anyone has any questions, and it's certainly in your court.
Thank you very much, Mr. Savoy. Obviously, it's a discussion time for board members as well. I've made it vocal too. The only thing, talking to my fellow board members, the thing that I understand, it's an unfortunate problem. It's great, everyone loves Sunset Heights. It's great, I live up in that area. I know there's more construction trucks than there are passenger cars every morning when I'm heading out to work. So it's just a very hot growing area. We can't keep up with capacity. The biggest things that we've talked about, and this is nothing new, is maintaining the integrity of the educational component. We were at overcapacity at some points and using labs, for example, to hold an English class, I'm using that as an example. That's not good. We need to be, and again, preaching to the choir, we need to make sure that every aspect of that school is being used for what it was intended to do. Yeah, there's sometimes you have to flex a little bit, but it can't happen because I believe it's going to sacrifice, sacrifice the educational component if we're overcrowded and too many students, as well as using classrooms and maybe forcing out opportunities for education by using classrooms for things they're not supposed to be used for just because of capacity issues. And the only other thing that and I know there's some people here to talk as well, and you'll get that full time to talk. I personally, and this is just a logic thing for me, have a hard time accepting that 7th graders don't get to continue. And even if they're out of district, it doesn't matter to me. I think that personally, it just doesn't make sense that if you're going to be there, 7th grade, going into 8th grade, moving you for 1 year, and then, move again to a high school. I have a problem with that. Love what the committee did, love a lot of what they said. Just tough choices, but quite honestly, when the emotion settles down, they're just logic choices. It has to be done. Does it stink? Yes, but it has to be done. And once, again, motion's cool, I don't think anyone would disagree with the majority of this. The only, like I said, the problem that I have that I'm going to be even pushing for is that we let 7th graders continue into 8th grade so they can make the transition smoothly into high school after that. So again, that's my piece. So open up to other board members, questions, comments for Mr. Savoy, or discussion amongst ourselves.
Do you want our comments or the community?
Yeah, let's
You want the community first then?
Yes.
Okay, great, that's great. All right, so we'll go ahead and have, I know we had the green
the
slips
green
right there, if you want to hand those to me, por favor. Good, thank you. All right, in no particular order, let's do Tanya Decker, James Decker, and then on deck, we'll play the baseball theme, is Beth Williams. And we have our new high-tech way of telling you. We used to throw things, and that's apparently it's a policy issue. We had to stop, so we've had to go with the iPad telling you when your time is up.
Okay.
That's when we throw things.
All right.
No, I'm just joking. Thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you for everything that you've done, and thank you for allowing us to speak. I have a daughter that's in 7th grade that is going into 8th grade, and that was a real concern with because she actually moved from Zuni over. We're in the Zuni Hills district. The reason we moved her was not because the teachers were bad at Zuni or because the teachers were better at Sunset. We moved her because all her friends were in that same area. She left one friend who is subsequently no longer at Zuni, and if we were to not have her as open enrollment be able to stay at Sunset Heights, she would end up back at Zuni with no friends going into the 8th grade.
As a teenager and as a real estate broker, I both love this because it's great growth in the area. It's one of the hottest growing zip codes in the valley. At the same time, we should have had the foresight to build some more infrastructure with these schools before this all happened, but who could have found, that this would happen. But yeah, I agree with you. I counsel my clients on this all the time. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is probably one of the most formative times, in my opinion, and I think you hit it right on the head, for these children. And they shouldn't be moved. They need to be, they've got these friends. I've got friends now that I've made in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I've had for 30-something years. And it's just important to try to keep the stability. So I would say moving the children below the grades, if necessary, you know, it's a tough choice no matter what you do, but, you know, I would say trying to keep the junior high, you know, consistent would be the best thing, you know, just in,
I mean, if we could put a recommendation out there that the new homes that are moving in, just let the homeowners, the builders know that, you know, 7th and 8th grade is a closed, and new kids moving into that school boundary line won't be able to go to school at there for the 8th grade. You know, and they flex them out to a different school. They would still end up back at Liberty, but they would be able to, you know, if they were new coming into the system, they wouldn't be, you know, they would be making friends wherever they would go, and those are the same students that would be feeding Liberty in the future
and
for
hopefully,
the graduating year
Yeah.
into their freshman year.
and hopefully our budgets will allow in the future to build some more schools that are necessary, rather than handing it to private individuals to build charter schools. That would be, I tell you what, I just passed one on 67th Avenue, it ticked me off, because those teachers aren't certified, we're handing them millions of dollars for a for-profit company, when our, I know, I'm getting on my soapbox. I'm just saying, it's, you know.
Not on the agenda.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Okay, Beth Williams is next, and on deck is Martin Lucero. Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Good evening.
Oh, hold on, we have to reset the thing.
Good evening, President Bullock and members of the board. My name is Beth Williams, and my son Jake is currently in 7th grade at Sunset Heights. And I'm here tonight to appeal to the board that the incoming 8th graders be allowed to stay at Sunset Heights for their final year before going on to high school. Jake attended Park Ridge from K through 5. When the boundaries changed, we chose to send him to Sunset Heights, which incidentally is the closest school to our home. Just very briefly, a background on Jake. He was diagnosed with Asperger's in 2nd grade. At Park Ridge, he progressed at an average rate, but has always been in a general education classroom with no extra assistance. He didn't handle environmental change well, ever. He never has, whether it's a new teacher or simply a change in the schedule. The transition to Sunset Heights wasn't easy, but fast forward to the end of his 6th grade year, and it's pretty outstanding. He was on honor roll, he was in future schools, probably have seen him, active in the school band. Jake has made dramatic strides, and all of his teachers will tell you that his progress has been remarkable. So now, as the area around our school has seen so much of what I'm gathering is unpredicted growth, the school needs to make some changes to accommodate possible influx of new students as the nearby neighborhoods fill up. I understand some variances will need to be pulled for grades that are at capacity, but 8th grade is an exciting but very challenging year for these kids. If asked to leave Sunset Heights, some kids might go back to their previous schools, and others will probably be resilient and be able to go to whatever school they land in. But for Jake, this would be detrimental. The teachers and staff at Sunset Heights know him and appreciate him for his differences. He's made some great new friends, and this is not easy for him. I know moving him to a new school next year would be devastating. His doctor, Dr. Melmed, said that a move like this could set him back considerably. So, as a matter of fact, I think that asking any 8th grader to move from the school that they know and love is not in the best interest of the child. Until now, it's been the culture of the Peoria School District to let them stay. In fact, Sunset Heights opened with 7th grade as its top grade for that reason. Many of these kids are rooted in this school with sports and clubs, student council. They've made some friendships that are going to last a lifetime. The benefits of keeping them there far outweigh the detriments that we would see moving them to a new school where they would know few, if any, kids. All this for the presumption that by mid-year, January 2017, that they will need to make room for families moving into these neighborhoods. Well, we don't know any dynamics of these families. We don't know what grades they're going to be going into, whether they'll even have 8th graders. So I don't know any parent who is, willing to move into that neighborhood and pull their 8th grader from a different school into Sunset Heights. So it just seems unlikely that there'd be an influx of 8th graders filling up the school. So I will wrap it up. Seems like there are a lot of unknowns and assumptions that they're basing this very, very important decision on. The Peoria District traditionally acts in the best interest of the students and the children, and I urge you to please continue to do so by allowing these 8th graders to stay.
Thank you very much. Wait for you to reset. Mr. Lucero, and then on deck would be David Side. Thank you for being here.
President Bullock, board members, I was part of that committee, and I would like to give you my thanks for the opportunity that you gave us to be able to do that. That committee represents a diversity that's also found in the school because of the ability that the school district had to be able to open up those doors. They saw the capacity, they opened it up, and it brought in a rich diversity to that school. That being said, I understand what growing pains are. I deal with this on a weekly basis. My job is to work with different schools to be able to plan transportation and to be able to go out there and help other schools do much what you have done. Seeing that, I'd like to express the difficulty that we had as a committee to be able to take a look at the numbers and to be able then to take a look and try to forecast within a crystal ball that has been unclear for many years. We are seeing rapid growth right now. We've seen it in many communities out in the West Valley, but we're also seeing that rapid growth also trying to take a step back because they try to rush out of the gates to try to make homes to sell once the economy started moving. And now they're trying to take a step back because they don't want to sell more homes than can be sold. They don't want to have the issue that happened back in 2011 all over again. With that being said, I wanted to ask you to take some reserve. I know you have the angst, that you're seeing the growing pains, and that you want to go ahead and try to quail whatever growth might happen, so that way it doesn't put the school in a bad situation. But at that same time, as you can kind of see, is if you don't know how many kids are actually coming, it's kind of difficult to make that projection. I'd like to go ahead and make also one additional request. I agree with everything that's been said and done because we did it as a committee, but to try to keep families together, give those options for those families that have maybe 8th graders as well as down to throughout the other grades to have an opportunity to stay together, because siblings do better when they're brought in together and they're made whole. I think a lot of families, if you were to break them apart, would have difficulty trying to have one kid stay in one school and have another child in a different school, and have that not be part of the recommendation. I think would be very difficult for that school to be able to maintain connectivity with the students that are there, as well as with the support that the families are giving. And when you take a look at the extracurricular activities at that school, you'll see a richness that's found with a lot of these out-of-district students doing things within the band, doing things within the sports and other activities. So once again, I'd like to go ahead and thank you for the opportunity you've given us to be able to do that, to be able to have this exercise, because there's other school districts out there that wouldn't have done that and would have just made changes as they saw fit.
Good. And thank you for your participation on that committee. All right, Mr. Side, thank you for being here tonight.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Bullock, members of the board, Dr. Santarelli. I appreciate having an opportunity to address you all tonight and share some thoughts regarding the growth projections related to the Sunset Heights and Liberty schools. I'll keep my comments brief. My family and I live near the crossroads of 107th Avenue and Deer Valley Roads in the Desert Star subdivision. My 12-year-old daughter currently attends the 7th grade at Sunset Heights Elementary, and aside from math, is having an outstanding junior high experience. She is very proud of the school she attends, has made many friendships with her fellow classmates, and was a member of the school softball team this past season. She actively supports her classmates in extracurricular activities and is genuinely engaged in, from what I can see, a wonderful junior high experience. I'm sure I'm biased, but I'm very proud to say she's growing up to be an outstanding young lady, and I thank the staff at Sunset Heights Elementary for their role in her development. When we enrolled my daughter at Sunset Heights Elementary, my wife and I fully understood the conditions related to open enrollment and the variance by which she was admitted. My family and I are also fully aware of the uptick in new home building in the surrounding area and absolutely understand the school's decision to no longer accept open enrollment applications. That being said, my family and I find ourselves in the unfortunate position of possibly having our daughter complete junior high in a new school as a new student and apart from her friends at Sunset Heights. Again, I understand this was always a potential possibility when we utilized a variance to enroll at Sunset Heights. However, at this time, I come before you on behalf of my family and any other affected families with children in similar situations to consider an allowance for those students completing 7th grade this year to be welcomed back to complete 8th grade and graduate from the school that they call home. I do understand that there are other ages and grades affected by this area's growth. However, with all due respect to families with children in, say, grades kindergarten, 1st grade, or 2nd grade, I do believe it's definitely different when you consider the possible negative impact changing schools can have on young boys and girls going through their teenage years. In closing, I'm a proud resident of the Peoria Unified School District, a proud parent of a student enrolled in the Peoria Unified School District, and a staunch supporter of any bond measures needed by the Peoria Unified School District to meet their mission of educating our young people. All I ask of you tonight is a common sense approach to overcrowding at Sunset Heights that includes an exception to allow this year's 7th grade students to stay and graduate from the school they love. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Board members, as requested, the speakers have spoken. We appreciate you being here tonight. Questions, comments? Start with the ladies and get to the gentleman. Your gentleman.
Well, looking at this, it looks to me like that would mean an exception for 39 students, Mr. Savoy?
You would look at the 7th grade column,
Right.
and that is correct. The recommendation is out of district first,
Right.
which would be 7 students. There are 2 of employees who work within the district whose children are on open enrollment there that have an address outside of our district. So really, it's 9 students. The second piece of the open enrollment, the in-district piece, would be if we identified that there was no capacity there. The interesting thing at 7th grade right now is the staffing for next year is, hold on one second, I had my finger there. We have 133 students that'll be in that. We're anticipating next year in 8th grade, 133, with 4 teachers. So that works out to an average class size of about 31 students. The reality is, we could do nothing at the 7th grade, and we would be confident that we would be able to maintain those 4 classrooms. Because with a class size of 31 with 4 classrooms, that means 16 more students would have to enroll in the 8th grade next year before we would add another class. 16 plus 1, actually 17 students. Does that make sense? You following my logic there?
Mm-hmm.
So the committee, when the committee made the recommendation, they weren't just looking at the 7th grade students. The committee's recommendation was all of the students out of the district. So to your point, Mrs. Doan, the out-of-district would be 37, take away the 9, it's actually 28, because remember, we don't want to count the 8th grade kids. This is from December. So out-of-district total, the whole school, is 28 students. That would be non-renewed next year. We're anticipating about 1,049 students. You would take away that 28, it would get you down to about 1,021. That would be the first level of capacity that you would create. And that would be across all different grade levels.
Mm-hmm.
So the committee, they weren't just looking and saying, let's not renew the 7th graders. They were talking about the whole school.
Yeah, but we're just talking about the 7th graders.
And yes, Mrs. Doan, and what happened at the community meeting was all of the feedback that we received from the community members centered on please allow our 7th grade children to continue and complete 8th grade. And so for the board, that would be 7 students, and our analysis is we could accommodate those 7 if we were to make the 7th grade kids. Does that make sense?
Yes, but we would need to make it clear that there's no more variance.
Right, well, we have that clear. The open enrollment is closed right now and will continue to be closed.
Yes. Thank you, Mr.
Does that
Savoy.
help?
Yes.
Okay.
There's actually a no vacancy sign out front, because I live near there. I drive by it. Yeah, it blinks. Mrs. Connect.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. In some ways, this is a nice problem to have, but in more ways, it's not, because it's tough. like the Deckers foresight. It's too bad we didn't have a little more foresight. Too bad my time machine isn't working. Because I think really this is a hard thing for families. It's hard for school boards. It's hard for the community. I think a worst-case scenario is asking families who've fallen in love with a school to leave. I think that's a tragedy, but we find ourselves in that situation now. Some comments that I had listening to our speakers here. And then before I forget, thank you, Mr. Savoy, for facilitating this community group, and thank you, community members, for spending your time to make our school district even better. So, some things that I really liked. I liked hearing that the school is holding students accountable for their behavior and academics. I do think that the priority for our school district, at least in my mind, has always been to serve first those families who have a home, have property within the boundaries of a school. They've made a decision, in the case of my family, we made a decision to buy a home where we wanted to go to school. And by doing that, families are engaging in their local community, they're establishing relationships with their neighbors, and they're paying their local property taxes into the school district and the school. So I believe that we have an obligation to serve those families first. I did have a question regarding those special classrooms. Are they being utilized as standard classrooms, or are they still, or do we still have specialized classrooms that we can use for what they're intended?
President Bullock, Mrs. Connect, the direction we certainly heard from the board as we embarked on this journey, meeting with the committee, and we affirmed that with the committee as well, is that the direction that we heard was to make every attempt not to impact those classrooms. Currently, you may recall, and we shared this in November, that the 5th through 8th grade, the upstairs STEM lab is currently being used by a 7th grade homeroom class. And then I also believe that our music class is in that building as well. But we did not impact either flex room, upstairs or downstairs, and we did not impact the STEM lab on the lower level. And what we heard from some of the teachers on our committee was that that room is utilized, and they were hoping that a homeroom class would not be assigned to that room. So the rooms as designed for flex and STEM are still standing that way.
That's really important, because we're really, it's counterintuitive and counterproductive if the greatest assets of the school end up being diminished by overcrowding. You lose the benefit of a new school if you don't have those things. And as a former classroom teacher, I can tell you that overcrowding is a real and significant issue.
Excuse me.
So we need to keep that in mind as we're moving forward, which brings me to this idea of a lottery. It seems to me that somebody just mentioned a class of 31, and that we would raise our capacity to 34 or 35 and do a lottery and let some kids in. So some kids would still be not allowed in, some kids would be in, and meanwhile, we would have our classrooms at maximum capacity, which is probably not the most effective learning environment for those 35 kids, which could be improved for the 30 kids and be equitable for the kids in the community. So I would like to rethink that. I did like what Mr. Lucero said about keeping families together. I think that is one of the fundamental reasons that we have a K-8 system in the Peoria School District. And so that certainly is a factor to keep in mind as we make this decision tonight. And I also think there's great value in the fact that historically we have given special accommodation to 8th graders. And I think it's the Deckers, I like that idea. It makes sense to me if we are going to, if we move in the direction where we allow 7th graders who are in district boundaries to stay. That certainly doesn't mean we should open the doors to 8th graders who have never stepped foot on the campus. They don't have a history to miss. So that would be an additional accommodation, I think, that seems logical to me. That's it. I just think the philosophy shouldn't be that we need to get as many people in. I think our priority needs to be creating the best learning environment for the most students. With the understanding, I think, that we need to respect the fact that some families have moved their families and purchased a home within the boundaries of that school. I think that's, to me, that's a first priority.
Thank you. Mr. John again.
Well, first of all, I think kudos goes out to the entire staff and administration of Sunset Heights for creating such an atmosphere that everyone wants to flock to, and has kind of, I guess, created this problem. So you're doing something right, and continue, I guess, and we'll work about this. Can you clarify, Mr. Savoy, the 35 max kids per homeroom, that is the max, or is it vary?
President Bullock, Mr. John again, per board policy, we have maximum class sizes that have been established by the board at different grade levels. So kindergarten is 24, first grade is 28, second and third grade is 30, and then grades 4 through 8 is 35. So what that means is, if you have 3 8th grade homerooms, you have 35 students in every one of those classes, and a new student arrives, then the policy would provide that we would add another class. So those are the max class sizes. And it doesn't mean that every one of our classes in every school is at that size. The average is, in fact, a little bit lower at every grade level if you look from a district-wide perspective. The other comment I'd just make, President Bullock, if I could, to Mrs. Connect's comment, and I think we heard it from some of the members of the community, what we refer to as legacy students. So that will be some of the challenge that we'll have to do in figuring out how students attend. Our attempt would not to separate families. So if one student was in, we would find every way, and the policy provides for that, meaning if you have a sibling that was enrolled the previous year, your status moves up on that ladder. So those are the finesse points that we would do, but we would certainly not want to have a family with 1 or 2 students at the school and another student at another school.
Yeah, and that could pose some decision-making. Let's imagine you had a 7th grader and a 3rd grader and a 4th grader, and they live outside of the district. So we would have to make a decision then whether or not we go in the direction of, I'm sorry, we can't offer you another variance, and the whole family goes, or the 8th grader's gonna be there and the whole family stays, or we split up the family. That sounds tough.
We would make every attempt not to do that. Just as an aside, one of our committee members is a parent of 7 children that attend Sunset Heights on open enrollment. So she's a very lovely lady. So.
So I guess the next thing I would say is kind of echoing on that. There has been precedents that we keep, to my understanding, that we keep 7th graders in place and so forth like that. So I think that is very important when we look forward at what we do tonight. I can just tell you from a personal experience, growing up K through 6, I was in a different school each one of those years. Finally getting to one school in 7th grade and staying with a group of friends through high school, I will tell you the folks that I hang out with today are still those ones I met in 7th grade. So this one kind of hits me a little bit differently just because I've lived this up through 7th grade and on. So, you know, and I guess I also look at it with the social impact as that's been mentioned before. Younger kids, I know it's not a good situation for any of the kids to be impacted in this way, but the younger ones seem to be a little bit more resilient. But as you know, as been mentioned by some of the parents and so forth, this is a critical time in our kids' development, their social behaviors, they're developing friends, just a critical time in their learning in many different ways. And I think that also has to be considered when we look at making that decision. But we could, is what I'm hearing, we could accommodate, if we went that direction, we could accommodate these 9 7th graders for next year in 8th grade.
President Bullock, Mr. John again, yes. We can.
couple minor quick comments. I kind of preempted, I apologize, preempting our speakers when I gave my opinion, just when something is, I'm sorry, I'm in the tech business, I build computers for a living. When something's illogical, I blurt it out, and then I filter it later, so I apologize to my fellow board members. But that's not uncommon. So I think what this really boils down to make it a logic argument, it's a hierarchy. You know, and again, I think we would all probably argue the little minute details of the hierarchy of what makes sense. You know, the integrity of the educational environment, in my mind, is the most important. Even if you had to, and this is a dramatic statement, displace people that live across the street, and I'm using it just as an example. If we are sacrificing the educational integrity of the building, what it was meant for, i.e. having 40 kids in a lab for a homeroom, okay, that defeats what we voted on a couple years ago to build a wonderful school. It was going to be a landmark and a marquee educational institution in Peoria, which we all agree on. So that's the first hierarchical, can't even say that correctly.
Hierarchical.
Thank you, hierarchical point. Then after that, then of course is the in-district, and then of course the out-of-district and move down. So we're really coming down to, we're going to be voting on tonight, do you accept the committee's recommendations? And my biggest point is, yes, accept it, because from what I've heard and the research I've done and who I've talked to, it meets the recommendation with the only pulling of that, and in essence it's going to be an amended motion, is to allow all 7th graders currently in the school to continue on to 8th grade, unless the parents decide to take their kid out, of course. You know, the parents' decision always trumps all. And again, the reason I said, again, another hierarchy move, if a 7th grader, you know, if a kid, you talk about keeping the family together, which Mr. Lucero brought up, completely agree with that. However, ultimately, it's the family's decision. If we do not have capacity in 4th grade, but we do in 7th grade, then the family just has to decide, you know, I'm going to pull both kids out because I want them together. At some point, it's the family's decision. We're doing the best we can, but we're limited by physical constraints. So it is what it is. Again, you put it back on the family. If you want your kids together, you're going to have to go to another school. Nothing personal, it's just the way that it fell. But I am fine with the committee's recommendation, except for changing it and amending it to say that all 7th graders are able to continue to 8th grade. The decision point then becomes, if you do have a...
Outside of district?
Yes, because the number is so small.
Okay.
That's my point. I'd like to amend it to have all 7th graders continue to 8th grade. They are a cohesive group. Whether you live in or out of the district, that's not the kid's decision. That was the parents' decision to live where they live. So I would like to, that's just my opinion, keep everybody there. Then it would boil down to meeting that family and community part, which I 100% agree with. That becomes then the next hierarchy of importance is, how do we keep the 3rd and 4th and 5th grade sibling of a coming in 8th grader? That would be extremely important from that. And then from there, after that is, hey, if we have capacity, we'll do it. Does that make sense? So anyway, without getting too in the weeds, that's what I would move for, is approving the recommendation, except striking it to include or amending the motion that all 7th graders, whether they're here, there, anywhere, continue to 8th grade and play that out. So, comments, questions, I've thrown that out there.
No, I'm fine with that, but I think maybe jumping a little ahead to what might end up being a future agenda item, I think we need to grapple with this idea of capacity. Do we want to be at capacity, or do we want to have an ideal class number? And if we're not at capacity, does that mean we're going to let kids in till we're bursting at the seams again, until we're creating inefficient learning environments, till we're stressing our teachers out to the max? I don't think that capacity should be the goal.
100% agree, and that's why, and we said the same thing in a different way. That's my primary item at the very top of my list of importance, even before kids, as bad as that sounds, is not sacrificing the integrity of the learning environment. And that includes, if the perfect class size is 24 for 7th graders, then I know we're constrained by budget. I'm not saying we're going to throw up a building tomorrow. We need to work towards that end. The best at the board in our limited sphere of influence when it comes to budget and money, we need to work towards that end. How do we get it so that the integrity of the learning environment is ideal, that people are clamoring to get there, but I'm sorry, we don't have capacity?
Well, and I'll just throw a little history on this. We raised our maximum class sizes during my tenure on the board during a time when our budgets were being slashed. So it was a reaction to shrinking budgets. We're still not, flush with lots of cash right now, but We did it at the time, I'm sure we could look back on the records, recognizing that it was not an ideal situation. And so if we did and do recognize that those class sizes are not ideal, we need to do what we can to maybe rein that in.
Understandable, and you know what, capacity utilization and capacity increase is the answer to it. So, and that'll be a discussion for another board meeting when we try and build some more schools. So,
Mr. Savoy, just to clarify though, that if we have the 4 homeroom classrooms for 8th grade, and again, we don't want to max out at 35, but if we had to, that number would be 140, and we're looking at 130 students coming in, so we have 10 student kind of gap from our max capacity for 8th grade. Am I understanding that right, or?
Would be 140, correct.
Okay. So we still have that 10 cushion to not max out, but we're still, it's still not ideal. It's still not ideal. I get you, yeah.
Right.
points that, Dr. Santarelli, did you have a question?
Yeah, really great discussion, and just a couple, Mr. Bullock, members of the board, certainly I would also like to compliment the committee for some wonderful work. I'm particularly pleased that we didn't create a divisive situation between staff and parents. The recommendations seem to preserve the integrity of keeping employees' children that are on open enrollment. I'm appreciative of that. I also just want to just continue to remind everyone that our open enrollment children are our children. And we take that very seriously, whether they're from in-district or out-of-district. And frankly, we have done an awful lot over the last 8 or 9 years to create an environment where we are opening our arms to open enrollment children and hopefully creating a place where they're getting an education that meets their needs. And so we've done a lot to do that through our signature programs. We've done a lot by way of reprogramming some things on all of our campuses. And I will tell you, to Mrs. Connect's point about class size and budget reductions, if it were not for our open enrollment students from particularly out of district during the recession, the cuts that we would have had to have made in this district would have even been greater than they were. And you know, just from a budgetary perspective, our open enrollment students are very much a part of what we believe is the success of our system. So this is a very difficult crossroads and very difficult decision for our committee. One other thing that I'll just mention, since I was probably one of the few in the room that were here when we were actually standing on the lot at Sunset Heights where it currently exists, and then we walked over to a dirt lot just north of where Liberty exists. And we said, which of these two sites will be our next elementary school? And this was back in 2005, by the way. 2 bond initiatives later, so you know, the crystal ball and trying to plan out back in '05 to now played out in a different way. Interestingly enough, the next school out in the north that was to be built was just north of Liberty, in what's now a vacant lot that is defined on that map that Mr. Savoy showed as the Meadows. All of the developers went belly up at that time, and the growth then came south of Liberty, which is now Sunset Heights. The district had the foresight to obtain a developer assistance agreement on those properties. And one of them we actually had to amend because it expired, and we renewed it to maintain the rights to that property just north of Liberty. Mr. Hicks and I have been in some extensive conversations with Southwest Communities about that property, and I won't go down the road too far because there's been some challenge related to who really owns it and what's going to happen. We think we're in good position. But I guess I mentioned that just because of the fact that, boy, this goes back a long way, and the journey's been interesting, and I'm just very pleased that we're at a point where I think a reasonable recommendation has been put forth. The comments about the 7th graders to be 8th graders, I couldn't agree more. It just makes good sense for those students. So a little history lesson, probably one you didn't necessarily want to hear tonight, but thank you, Mr. Bullock, and a few comments on our open enrollment kids.
Good, thank you, Dr. Santarelli, for that perspective. Remember, you need to know history or else you're possibly repeating it, right?
Yeah, could be.
Well, thank you for those comments, Dr. Santarelli, and if I sounded like I wasn't welcoming to our out-of-district students, I apologize for that, because they do add so much to our school communities. And like I said, the hardest thing we ever have to do is tell somebody that we're sorry that there's no room next year. That's very difficult.
Understandable. This actual whole agenda item includes Liberty as well.
Right.
So let's go ahead and move with Liberty. Do we have any people want to speak about the Liberty part, or any other speakers, just the four that we had? Okay, just making sure. I don't want to exclude anybody. We'd like to have anybody, don't mind, pick up there on the Liberty part.
I'd be happy to do that. Thank you,
Very
President
much.
Bullock. Thank you very much for your feedback. The first thing I'd like to begin with is if we do have a number of our Liberty High School committee members here, if they could please stand and be recognized. I know Principal Croto is here as well. Committee members. This committee also is similar to the Sunset Heights in the work that Mr. Croto did to obtain a fair representation of the different categories as far as parental participation. This committee met on 2 occasions, and we began with our projections as well. And again, these numbers come from Mrs. Davy and her team. The significant piece here is if you get out to 2019, we're pushing 3,000 students. And the thing I just want to remind the board, if you recall, your direction to us was try to find a bridge for the next 2 to 3 years that we can survive and then be prepared for potentially construction of a new high school if all that moves through. We know that tomorrow we don't need the new high school, maybe not the next year, but we know 4 years from now we will, based on our projections. And it will take that amount of time with voting, bonding, design, and then construction. So we want to use that foresight to prepare. So we shared this with our committee first off. And then what we did is we got into the brass tacks of who are the students that are at Liberty High School. And I certainly want to thank Principal Croto and his administration team. They did a lot of number crunching over the holiday. We met before the Christmas holiday, and they did a lot of work over the break, and then we followed up with another meeting in January. What's significant about this, these numbers were actually of just this past week. We updated all of our numbers. We're showing ourselves at just under 2,300 students for this current school year, which includes 733 open enrollments. And then you can see next year, and I spoke with them the other day, we're right on target within 3 students right now as of today for those classes that will be at Liberty High School next year.
Mr.
So,
Savoy, I'm
yes,
sorry.
sir.
Capacity for Liberty again, could you remind us?
Okay, so that's President Bullock, that's a good question. If you recall, at previous board meetings, we talked about the sweet spot. You know, we try to get our high schools anywhere from about 18 to 2,000, 2,100. High school's a little bit different. We can go beyond that capacity a little bit in the way that we use the facility. One of the things, I'll just say briefly, when you think of an elementary school, there's a homeroom teacher at every door, and there's a little classroom of children that are with her or him for the entire day. I mean, they're together. I mean, that's a bond for 180 days. High school is a little bit different, how you can utilize the space. Teachers can move about. Students are not attached to a specific teacher for the entire day. You know, the flexibility and the freedom of a young high school student. So one of the things that we did with Mr. Croto, the way we looked at capacity was we counted every classroom on the campus, and we came up with 78. We took a number, 30, to the idea of what is the class size, and we used the number 30, and that equals 2,340 students. So what that means is if we maximize every classroom, every hour of the day, we can accommodate 2,340 students on a daily basis. We're under that number right now, but we know that we're going to go above that number about 3 to 4 years out. So that's a number, and that's an important number, and you'll see as we go through this presentation why that number is important.
Quick question for you. That number, I understand from the multiplication. Usually we have to talk about elementary schools, and I know it's a whole different paradigm there. They have, you know, everyone's built for a certain capacity. Is that dictated by fire code, square feet per child, stuff like that? I guess that's what the question I should have asked for Liberty. Does it have a rated capacity that it's allowed to carry? Or are you saying that, you know, we can work things, it may be rated for 2,000 as an example at one time, but because of flex use, we can go up to 2,300?
President Bullock, members of the board, I cannot give you an actual number that's fire rated for the entire school. I know that the classroom size, you would, a typical classroom, you wouldn't want to exceed 35. When I talk with Principal Croto, we feel we can handle 2,500 students, and then you begin to feel the pressure of that many students on a campus. One of the things that we talked about to alleviate that, why we want to focus on this number of the 2,340, is we're thinking that's a traditional day, 5-period day. One of the things that we talked about in the Liberty Group was, if we max out at 2,300 in a 5-period day, to increase that capacity without violating fire code, is you would add a 0 hour, meaning you could have another class of students come in prior to the 7:20 start, and we also talked about adding a 6th hour. So we could, in essence, create 2 more wings to the day to accommodate 2,300 students in each of those. Now, the students wouldn't go 0 hour through 6. You'd have to flex your students. They would still do their 4 periods a day, but their day might look a little different. So that was one of the things that we discussed as a committee. And that's significant because that's actually part of our proposal that we would do to maintain and manage the number of students that would come to Liberty before we would need a new school. If we work with that number 2,340 and we have enrolled 2,248, we know that we have 92 seats remaining. And one of the things that Mr. Croto and his administration team would do is they would monitor getting as close as you could to that sweet spot and trying to balance between what you're anticipating moving in and housing development and families moving into your area, and do you still have room and capacity to accept some open enrollment. When we talked with the high school committee, there's a desire to create some of that diversity of having that flexibility of some students being admitted on open enrollment. Not everyone who requests, but there was a little bit of that flexibility. And then this just describes what I just talked about. So the proposal from the committee that we had that worked on this was to continue to monitor our enrollment, work toward the sweet spot, limit open enrollment, but still keep it as a viable option. And then this would fall on the shoulders of Principal Croto and his administrative team to manage that number, to watch that number. Because we know, if I go back a few slides real quick, we know that we have 594 seniors next year. The following freshmen, okay, the kids that we were talking about, the 7th graders right now, 381 just students rolling over from Sunset, Zuni Hills, Lake Pleasant, Vistancia. So just looking at that 381 to the 534, you can see the cushion that's there that we can use to manage that number. And then the last piece was to reconvene the committee again next fall to check and see how are we doing with this idea of working toward what I call the sweet spot. How are we doing? How are we managing that growth? And then the other piece that would be happening is Ms. Davy would be continuing updating and working toward how are the housing developments that we looked at on that previous map of the students moving in. Are we seeing that growth? And then, so that would be next fall. Then we think the following fall, we may have to consider, based on what it looks like, do we add a 0 hour or a 6th or both? So we have the flexibility, we believe, to get us through the window of 2 to 3 years. But after that, it gets too big at 3,000. So I'll stop there. That was a little bit easier working on the high school picture.
Quick question for you. We remember when I first got on the board in 2013, we had that big, redistricting boundary issue that we had, and we had to make some votes there to realign boundaries. Sunrise Mountain in this whole equation, it's literally right down the street. Sunrise Mountain has a lower student count, obviously, than Liberty does. Is there any, again, crystal ball question, do you foresee with the growth? Maybe I'm slighted because I live up there, and it just seems like there's a lot more going up than what these numbers show. And again, of course, not every house has high school kids in it. I get that. Is there any fear, question, potential for having to make any boundary changes to move more students to Sunrise Mountain going forward? As we talked about 3 years ago, we actually had to realign, talk about especially kids up in Vistancia and up in, Cross River and places like that. Any inkling of that at all in the future?
President Bullock, members of the board, I wouldn't want to jump too far ahead into that conversation. I think that looking at the elementary boundaries could possibly drive some decisions about the high school. The thing that's very encouraging about the high school is we're seeing some really robust increase in our enrollment numbers. I think we're sitting at, 17, getting close to 1,800 at Sunrise. And that was one of the things that we anticipated, was originally some of the Park Ridge students continue to seek open enrollment at Liberty, and now as we're past that point, more of the kids are funneling right in to Sunrise.
Okay. Good, thank you.
You're
Board
welcome.
members, questions, comments on this second part of the
No, that was pretty clear.
second half
Thank
of the
you.
equation? You have a perplexing look that begs a question.
It's not 30 kids in a classroom. I think that's what I'm struggling with, because we have some classrooms that have a lot more kids and some that have fewer kids. Seeing the numbers and saying that there's more capacity doesn't jive with some of the feedback I've received from individuals up there who say that Liberty really feels crowded. So I just guess I'm trying to figure that out in my own head.
And
There again, I go back to, if it's not ideal, let's not exacerbate the problem by, increasing to allow open enrollment. Mr. Savoy, you said that we might allow 100 more kids, and that might be fewer than want in. What criteria would be utilized to decide which 100 get in?
President Bullock, Mrs. Connect, the policy provides that you timestamp when folks turn in those open enrollment requests, and then it would just be first turned in, and you would follow that process.
Was there any conversation by the committee just to say, let's cap open enrollment where it is now?
President Bullock, Mrs. Connect, really the sense was, if we have the ability to do that, that we should consider accepting open enrollment. It was not to cap it and close it down completely. We've kind of we've monitored that, and I think the flexibility that this recommendation allows is monitoring by myself, K-12 administration, Dr. Cruz, with Mr. Croto, to keep an eye on that, saying, okay, where are you at right now? Working with Ms. Davy, what are we projecting? So it's not an automatic, you can accept this. It's, where are we at? The thing about the high school is, once you have the sophomore, the junior, senior classes in, where the flexibility comes is at the freshman level.
Right.
And so that's the piece you would have to monitor. And you'd have to say, Mr. Croto, that's it, 30 this year, or the 100, whatever it may be. But it's not just open up willy-nilly. There is a controlled monitoring of that. But I felt, in working with the committee, particularly with the administration team, was to create that flexibility. We tried to create a model that provided flexibility for the school and still be able to manage the numbers of students that came in.
Okay.
Mr. Jonigan?
No, no real questions on it. I agree. I think it is going to be one of those topics that has to never be too far away from the front of your mind and have to be monitored. And I think it's something that will just continually be watched. And as long as we're not getting an enormous amount of feedback that things are getting crazy or busting at the seams, or the learning isn't being compromised or anything like that. I think it's the best plan that we can outline right now.
I think as board members, we don't work here full-time. This is our volunteer job, as much as we can afford to put towards it. We rely on your professionalism, Dr. Centerly and staff, especially Mr. Croto. Both my last two kids before I become an empty nester both go to Liberty. I always joke with them. I say it's like going to a community college there. It's such a big campus and a lot of students. There's a lot of energy there. So, and well done, Mr. Croto and his staff for running such a great organization, and obviously the K-12 administrator. We're going to rely heavily on principal, K-12 administrator, and teachers to let us know. Yes. And parents too. You're right. I stand corrected there. To let us know as a board, because we're not there all the time. Where are the breaking points if they come up? Not that you're not going to know it, but that's something we're going to really rely on, is to be told that, because to get ahead of the game. If something happens and, again, 200 kids come in, or a freshman class all of a sudden balloons for whatever reason, then we need to be kept abreast of that, because we never want, again, sacrifice the integrity of the school, put extra pressure on Mr. Croto, Principal Croto, and his staff, to where they're like, okay, we're at capacity, we're doing okay, but we're really we're dropping off on the greatness that Liberty is and what the staff has been able to achieve. So I'm hoping that we continue, and I know we will, but I'm hoping that we get a lot of real-time data and information back when we even get close to that cracking point, if you will, or that breaking point, to where we can try and make those appropriate decisions, as hard as they are, because ultimately it's the board's decision. We're the ones that are going to decide, you know what, I'm sorry, we need to realign boundaries because Liberty is we're starting to sacrifice the greatness of the education. And so I would please, Principal Croto and Mr. Savoy and staff and teachers, let us know, help us to know when that point is getting close, so we can assist and realign things as appropriate. Those are decisions to be made early versus late, so I appreciate you doing that for us. Any other questions or comments? This is, and thank you for hanging in there, Mr. Savoy. This is an action item. I'm going to propose, obviously we have to vote on this particular item, but I'm going to propose, and I'm going to create an amended motion. Really, we've got the original motion is one whole, except the whole recommendation, which is the K-8 component and the Liberty, or the 9 through 12 component as well. It's a purview of the board. I'm going to recommend we do that to split this out. Or we can do it as accept the committee's recommendation with any modification, which again, I'm going to recommend we modify with the 7th grade pullout, accepting recommendation with that, pulling the 7th grade to 8th grade component out of it. So what is, Dr. Centerly and Mrs. McCarty, what is the best way for us to do that without getting really convoluted?
Mr. Bullock, I believe for sake of Ms. McCarty, one motion covering them both is probably most efficient.
Good? Okay, that's good. All right, so I'll make an amended motion to this, that we accept the committee's recommendation as stated, with the exception of allowing all 7th graders to continue on the school of their existing school to finish out their junior high. So you're the wordsmith. Okay. I talk way too much. I can create a whole novel out of what I just said. You're much better at bottom lining it. But you know what I'm saying. She's already at work. You can just see the gears turning. You always have to have a bottom liner for someone who talks too much, and she's my bottom liner. And at least I can admit that.
Frequently.
I don't get paid enough for that to be made fun of. That's all right. I'm just going to have some M&Ms and be okay with it.
And raisins.
Raisins. Nature's gift to mankind.
Again, this would be one of those great times for that hold music.
On hold music, right? We just do that one time, just vote. We're just going to overrule and have one of our high school bands ensembles come and play for us during these times. Can't we do an agenda item for that?
Do whatever you want.
There we
President
go.
Bullock.
Yes, good.
It comes up too much.
No, how awesome would it be? Hey, wait, I got this. I hereby say that we have a band during every silent moment. There we go. That was easy.
I don't think anything happened, though.
It's all right. Let a boy dream. Or for a moment, yeah. You can't, right? You can't, right? And thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us while we go through this. We want to make sure that we do it right. Obviously, it's a decision that affects many people, and if you don't do it correctly, it affects people for years to come. So, it's worth an extra 30 minutes of going back and forth. We appreciate that. All right, so it has been amended, and I'll go ahead and read that since I moved it. We'll move to approve the recommendation as submitted by the Sunset Heights Each Community Committee with the, okay. All right, do you want to change that, or? No, let's do it as it. No, let's move. I will not even say that word. Okay, therefore, I move to approve the recommendation as submitted by the Sunset Heights Community Committee, with the exception of allowing all 7th graders currently in open enrollment to remain at Sunset Heights. Further move to approve the recommendation of the Liberty High School Community Committee as presented. I need a second.
I will second.
Okay. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Mr. John again. This is a voting item. Please cast your vote. All right, passes 4-0. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Well, I will just follow up by saying I really liked that the vigilance is part of the plan, to stay vigilant, to stay on top of this and not let it get out of control. We're looking at it every year with the community. That's a good thing.
Yeah, well, you have to. Wonderful, and thank you all who were here tonight. Appreciate it. Now you can stay. It gets really exciting after this part 2. But if you don't want to stay, we don't take it personal, so thank you. Move on to the next item on the agenda. Number 13 is a presentation consideration of approval of the proposed professional development calendar for the 2016-2017 school year. Dr. Cruz, I tried to keep him here.
It's just getting exciting.
I know, right? Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bullock, Governing Board. I'm very pleased to be before you tonight to talk about professional development for next year. We talk a lot about attracting and retaining our very much effective teachers in our school district, and we talk a lot about 3 things: time, compensation, and resources. And we are hoping to address all 3 of those things moving forward into next year. But tonight, I'm here to talk about time. So that being said, I'd like to talk about a proposal for next year. Next year, we'd like to bring forward 5 full days, which is not dissimilar from what we're doing this year. They would be district-based. That is the same as what we're doing this year. What is not the same as what we're doing this year is we'd like to propose late starts for next year. As you have heard, many of you go to our schools on a regular basis and you talk to our teachers, and they tell you time and time again, they need more time. They need more time during their school day. They need more time together. They need more time together to plan and collaborate around what they do daily with kids. And we'd like to capture that time during the day for them. So we'd like to do that in a late start way. They would be school-based days. They would not be district-based in any way, shape, or form. They would replace our early release PD days. They would be 90 minutes. We have kind of shifted our thinking from when we first started this. We started thinking that it would be on a Wednesday. We ran into some glitches with that with our preschool program, so we've shifted that to a Monday. And the good news is that this is budget neutral, so it doesn't cost us anything.
May I ask a question, Mr. Bullock? What does that mean, school-based?
That means that we are not going to prescribe any agenda for them from a district level. It's going to be school-based and school-run, so...
So the agenda is up to the school?
The agenda is up to the
prescribed.
school, but I also, and as I often say, and principals and K-12 are used to this, that I often say, okay, but here's my non-negotiable, that teachers are also not going to be in their rooms with their door closed by themselves. They're going to be working with their teams, collaborating around planning and instruction. They're going to be doing what they always talk about. We need time for planning and preparation. They're going to be doing that with their grade level teams. So that's what that time would be used for.
Thank you.
So, and that would not be prescribed by anything that we would be telling them to do. They would be using that time for things that they need to do and things that they decide that they need to do during that time. We would still have some early release days, though, so we can't get rid of all of those early release days. We still have parent-teacher conference days. We still have our My Life days. We have 2 of those a year. And we still would have an early release day at the end of each semester. We would still serve breakfast and lunch when kids come to school. We would have childcare available. We would offer that through our Kids Zone program at our Glendale schools and certainly through our AM/PM program at our Peoria schools. And a lot of people ask, well, how are you able to do this? Well, a couple years ago, the law was changed, and I've attached the law, for those of you who want some bedtime reading, the statute, and it says that students are able to have instructional hours or instructional days. So I have attached, and you can see the number of instructional hours required by grade band, and certainly we will meet all of those instructional hours with this plan moving forward. And so these are our proposed professional development dates and the late start dates moving forward. We would publish these way ahead of time, certainly for all of our parents, so they would have these, and we would push them out through all of our communication channels, certainly, as we do always for parents, so that they can plan ahead. I did go out and get feedback from Peoria United Parent Council, from our parent dinner. I did speak also with our association advisories. I did also speak with our site administrators. We also did reach out to some other districts that are doing these type of late starts to get some feedback from them.
Dr. Cruz, I did
Yes,
not
ma'am.
get any direct input from teachers, but I'm curious what the associations had to say about this.
Mr. Bullock and Mrs. Connect, I can tell you that it was overwhelmingly positive, and I can tell you what I've had to do is had to kind of quelch everybody from saying that this is a done deal and say, this has not been board approved. Please do not say that this is done. Everybody has said, well, when we have, and I go, whoa, 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 whoa.
And teachers like it because?
They're fresh in the morning, they'll come, they'll be ready to go. When you have this on an early release, there's complications with waiting for students to be picked up, there's duties, there's activities after school, you're always waiting for things to happen. They come, they're ready to go, and they can just get started. And teachers have been asking for this, time and time again. And so have principals, because they need this really, really structured time with their staff.
Yes, and I've had the opportunity to hear you present to 2 different parent groups. And so I've heard some of the concerns there and some of the excitement there. There's a little both. I wonder if
Without
you'd share for
question.
the rest of the board and the community at large what some of those concerns might be and how we might be able to mitigate it in some ways.
Mr. Bullock, Mrs. Connect, absolutely. So whenever you make a change like this, it does not come without some of those fears, you bet. So there are some fears of, what about those childcare issues? What about the fear of absenteeism? That, there's going to be a late start day and then we're just going to not have kids come to school on that day. Or that, kids are just going to maybe come to school late. They're going to maybe not have transportation to school, or parents are going to have really a lot of issues getting them to school because they aren't going to have, those other issues getting to work. And so we've tried to relay those fears with, we can have a special deal with, on those days, you can purchase a special package with our child care programs, with our Kids Zone or with AM/PM. You don't have to use it any other time, but you can purchase a special program just for our late start days. You don't have to use it any other time. So, that's an option. I also have heard from staff that, it could be a hardship for them. Well, what do I do with my kids during that time? what if I can't afford to send them to those programs? So it's not all rosy for staff either. I mean, there's going to be pros and cons either way. We did take all of that feedback, and we felt that the pros far outweighed the cons. We did do some monitoring and adjusting. We did take the number of late starts down to 9 as opposed to 12. So we did really respond and listen to some of the feedback. And we really do think that the pros outweigh the cons, and we are going to really monitor and listen as we implement this and see if we can, really monitor and adjust as we go, and see if we can help, and see if there are things as we go, if we can make them better along the way. And that's it. Other questions?
Hit that button first. All along, I've had the concerns that were echoed by yourself. How do we get kids there when we're coming late? Parents have to go to school or work early. I think that's, to me, the biggest challenge. I'm glad we have an alternate solution to that. But I think if, we talk a lot as a group that we want to listen to our teachers. We want to make sure that we do things for them. I think this addresses a couple different aspects. One gives them, to your point, the fresh start without any unforeseen issues, causing them some of the uninterrupted time at the end of the day. And I think, it just has a lot of positives, and I think it's something that we need to look forward and move forward on. So I'm pretty good with it.
Mrs. Doan, any questions or comments?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I'm also excited about this. I know some other districts actually do this weekly, not that we're going that direction now. Obviously, we'll take one step at a time and see how it goes. But that is the biggest thing I hear, as you echo, when I go out and do school tours, is two things. More time, and it's interesting, it's not more time just for the sake of more time. It's more time because there's so many more things on their plate, whether it's federal, whether it's state, whether it's district. There's so many things to do that aren't core teaching, reading, writing, arithmetic. I hear that all the time. What can you do? As I always ask them, what is one thing the board can do to help move the needle at your school just a little bit? Just a little bit. Give us more time because we have so much more to do than they did, 10, 20, 30 years ago. So in order to keep the integrity of what we do and from not losing our minds, give us some uninterrupted time to work with our cohort group and create the magic, because it's getting harder and harder to create magic with all the other things on their plate. So I think this accomplishes both.
And school-based.
Huh?
And school-based. So
And
we're
school-based, good. Yeah, let them do what they do best. Good. All right, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? If not, you do. We are on the questions screen, so go ahead.
Dr. Cruz, one thing that you didn't mention in this venue, but you have in the past that I think is very interesting when parents say, well, why don't we just keep it in the morning versus the afternoon, is the perspective of the police department.
That, Mr. Bullock and Mrs. Connect, absolutely. Let me mention that in the past, when we have had early release days, we have heard from our local police department, particularly Peoria PD, that it is sometimes troublesome when our youth are unsupervised in the afternoons out.
For a long period.
For long periods of time. So they tend to like this plan a little better.
Yeah, good.
That makes sense.
Well, my final comment was,
But you only got 2 questions. That's what I'm limited to.
I'm trying to be just like you.
But that's a comment, not a question.
I think this really illustrates our commitment to professional development, and so I like it. I recognize there's a little bit of angst around it, but I think it's a creative idea. I think it shows that we're risk takers, that we're willing to try something innovative, and I really hope that it is successful and meets the needs of all of our teachers, and that our kids and our families adapt, and we find that it's a real positive thing. And go forth and prosper, or live long and prosper, whatever.
Even though that was really odd, would you like to go ahead and move this?
I will move it.
All right.
Thank you.
It was odd?
No, live long and prosper.
Oh.
You're going to read the motion?
Okay. Yes. I move to approve the new professional development model as presented by Dr. Cruz.
I'll second that.
Okay.
No. This is a voting item. Please cast your votes, members. 4-0. Thank you very much, Dr. Cruz. We look forward to, again, moving the needle just a little bit to help. So thank you
Your
for that.
teachers and your principals, thank you. Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is first reading of proposed changes to policy JLIA, supervision of students. Mr. Hancock, welcome aboard, sir.
President Bullock, governing board members, thank you. The administration is recommending changes to policy JLIA, supervision of students, based on a policy advisory from the Arizona School Boards Association as presented in the governing board packet.
We like to call this the Julia.
Julia, why is that?
Because it's JLIA. Julia.
And this is a first reading of this policy advisory recommendation, so if you do have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
Can I ask you a question? I've looked it over, but what is the genesis of the changes? What is the genesis of the changes while they're being made? Besides ASB recommends it, that's great, but
President Bullock, governing board members, the reason for the recommended changes is the Arizona Risk Retention Trust, which is similar to the Valley Schools Trust that the Peoria District is a part of, has recommended the language changes simply to assign the appropriate level of responsibility to the school districts. The previous language did allow for some misinterpretation that could increase liability for school districts at an unnecessary level.
I'm convinced 90% of our changes are because of attorneys. That's just a guess.
President Bullock,
We have a
governing
second.
board members.
Please cast your votes, members. Good. Any
Yes, that's probably correct.
Yes, it's all about liability and covering your school.
I have no changes to
No
propose.
changes. Mrs. Doan, any questions, comments, or changes for Mr. Hancock?
No?
Okay. Mr. Jonigan? I'm good. Okay, we are good.
Thank you very
Look
much.
forward to seeing you bring that back. Well, there's no changes, so we'll bring it back for a vote next time.
Yes, sir, we'll have it as a part of the consent agenda.
All right, thank you very much. All right, next item on the agenda is, always this time of year exciting, Dr. Santarelli,
Yeah,
report
thank
and
you.
discussion of local, state, and federal legislative issues and activities.
Well, thank you very much. There's certainly lots going on. I have provided a copy for all of you at the dais, a real nice report that Stifel does in relationship to legislative activity, and there is a lot going on. On the positive front, the governor did sign the reversal of the JTED funding bill. That certainly was House Bill 2642. There were some caveats to that bill that are a little bit problematic, but there's language also in there that gives a little bit of latitude to a task force to do some work to help work through some of those bumps. So that's a very favorable reassignment of about the $29 million. And I just want to make a point here that that's not new money. That is keeping that cut from happening next year. So the money, some people are already asking, what do you do with that extra money? Well, it's not extra money, it's just keeping us from cutting more in that area. So that was very positive. Not much on current year funding. You know that there's efforts to try to delay the current year funding for another year, primarily because there's a sense that the state ADE, through their computer systems, would have real difficulty with that. There's some other challenges, but not a lot of movement that I'm hearing on that. You may have heard about the empowerment scholarship legislation, and that did get through and gathered some momentum on the House side. It will be heard on the Senate side, I believe, tomorrow, and so we'll see where that goes. Is it the other way around? House? Thank you. It went Senate. Yes, thank you for that clarification. And House. This is not something that doesn't happen every year with this attempt to, with expansion to ESA, and it was interesting. Even today, there was an article that shed light on that in the Arizona Republic, and there's been a lot more media attention around this conversation, I think, this year than in years past, but we'll stay tuned to that. And I'll let Mr. Hicks talk a little bit about some of the budgetary things that we're waiting to find out about, actually. So, Mr. Hicks.
President Bullock, members of the governing board, thank you very much, Dr. Santarelli. So I'm just going to hit on just a few little updates. One, just to give you a heads up, the Auditor General Report, Dollars in the Classroom annual report will be released next week. With the assistance of Ms. Airy, was interviewed by NPR and KJAZ reporter on that sense, so I'm sure she gave it a heads up that that article probably coming out Tuesday regarding that. It was good that we're allowed to inform. I know that I've mentioned to the board many times, we do expect our dollars in the classroom to go down, and there's a significant decrease. And remember, there's two main driving reasons, and one is the elimination of the career ladder funding, which was solely went to teachers, so 100% of that was in the classroom. And so over the last few years, we've been eliminating $1.6 million out of that. And then the second was the account code change that saw a shift of where we're paying our retiree health care benefits is now being shifted to administrative costs. So just to be clear, when that happens, it does not mean that administrative costs went up and we hired additional administrators or we've added administrative costs. It is purely an account code change from that standpoint. And we have discussed that a few times. I was going to mention that the ESA also. I know that I mentioned that also to our reporter. And I've had a few questions from that from people. A lot of it is, what is the ESA? Because we all mentioned just ESA. I boil it down to just simply, it's the legislature paying parents to take their kids out of public schools right now. So just to really, it is really essentially that's what it is in that sense, and it is not good. In my opinion, on that sense. So we have heard that it's being held in the House. I think they said it probably won't be heard this week and maybe heard Monday, I think, is what I heard, although we all hear different things, so you never know in that sense.
So that gives our community time to weigh in.
Yes. I know that it is something, even today, just talking with assistant principals that was going to have a site council meeting and wanted to give a little budget legislative update. I always try to filter some of these things in so that as people are having conversations and have an opportunity to maybe, I know it's very a thin hope that they will call their legislature, but if they're having conversations, maybe just the more we talk about some of these changes and the difficulty, much like current year funding, I try to talk about that as much as possible with people. That is not, there was a bill to address that. That is not moved, it died, and current year funding will be dealt with during the budget negotiations. So down to the state budget negotiations, I've put in some phone calls and some emails down to our legislators. I did get one return back right before we came into the board, and there's been nothing that they could report. So it's been kind of quiet this whole week. I hope that means that there's some stuff going on behind the scenes right now. We're trying to get all those lobbyists are all probably working as hard as they can to get what they their points in as much as possible. We know they've pledged, and I fully believe they're trying to get out as soon as possible. Election year, you also have certain people running for the federal level, and so they need to get out as soon as possible so they can start those campaigns from that standpoint. So I think they've always said their goal is to be out before the end of March, and I don't see why they wouldn't have that. From the district's budget level, just we haven't had too much of a conversation since our board retreat back in January. But from a budget team, we've had about 4 or 5 different meetings. So we continue to meet. We start talking. We have lots of conversations about our board retreat, what the board's impact and what their conversations were. We start working through the different scenarios. So right now, we technically have 4 different budget scenarios we're trying to work through. Really 3, and really we're just focusing on 2, which is the 16-17 with and without Prop 1, 2, 3 passing. And so it's been a really good process in the sense that we brought up a lot of little things are being, I shouldn't have said little things, issues are being identified such as reclassification, so some of the information that was talked to the governing board on the retreat during the compensation comparison analysis, looking at some reclassifications, some of the sub issues that we're having with subs, looking at increasing some teacher stipends, looking at bringing back some teacher stipends. There's been some looking at some special ed increase in their budget for some of the services that they're having, putting in a contingency for current year funding. If that's not addressed, we'll be looking at a contingency. And then also the big conversation is resources. What is the number to land on for resources? And if you remember with the governing board, we framed it as one-time money that's going to be coming in if 1, 2, 3 passes for this year, and then also ongoing. And so we're having both those conversations. How much can we pull off for some ongoing resources, and then how much of the one-time money should go for instructional resources in that sense. So those conversations continue to happen. I think our next meeting is next Tuesday with, I think there's about 14 of us that are on the budget team, and we're working down that path to hopefully, as the legislature ends, we'll be bringing back recommendations, meeting with the superintendent, and then ultimately with the governing board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hicks. Dr. Centerelli, quick question, maybe you don't have an answer for it right now. Last year, a lot of bold moves were made by our state legislators and the governor, and then I think they blinked because of the outpouring of support, grassroots support. And, our legislators, I think a lot of them have kids. They don't hate schools. I don't mean that. It's just so much going on. Sometimes they don't have time to learn, and they make decisions based on what leadership tells them, and sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. Be that as it may, they had to backpedal because of public perception. This is, we're a third of the way, half of the way through our current legislative session, if it truly gets out the end of this month or next month. Do you have a flavor for the feeling, the thought, the character, the personality this session after what happened over the last year with the huge outpouring of support from people saying, whoa, stop with this education cut?
Ms. Bullock, I'll give you my perception on it. I think there's been a whole lot of emphasis placed on Prop 123, and the legislature is pretty much deferring, I think as a result of the governor's efforts to use that as a vehicle to satisfy some of the public's interest in getting money back into the classroom. We all know, that that's a slippery slope relative to really what that's going to do. But I believe that that's, certainly in my conversations, that's been the first line of defense in relationship to, well, it's going to our voters, and Prop 123 is really something that is significant in relationship to dollars, and it is. Still doesn't reset us back to where we were in '08, but it's certainly a step in that direction. But that's what I'm sensing, is that there's just so much of a deferral, if you will, to this is all Prop 123, and that's their big step this year from my perspective.
Interesting, okay. Thank you very much. All right, next item on the agenda is our request for agenda items for future governing board meetings. Anything this time? Nope. Nope, nothing for myself either. All right, next item, number 17, consideration and approval of the consent agenda. Are we going to be pulling the donation report?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have any comment? You have any comment on that? Why it's being pulled?
If you pull the donations, do you want to move the rest of it and then talk about the donations?
Great.
Mr. Bullock, I move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the donations report.
I'll second that. Okay, that passes 4-0. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is number 27C, the donations report. Dr. Santarelli?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bullock. If we could open the donations report for us here quickly. I just want to call attention to one item on the donations report, and that's actually the second item, if I'm seeing that correctly. A pretty significant check from Honeywell International Charity of $2204.97. We need to remove that from the agenda. That apparently was a donation that was intended for the Cactus High School Boys Booster Club, Boys Basketball Booster Club, and it was incorrectly, sent here and actually identified as coming to the district, and so they've requested that that not be approved, and that it be routed back to the Booster Club there. So I would suggest that we approve the donations report as listed, with the exception of the Honeywell International Charity Matching /M Stewart portion.
Yeah, great, and that's their wishes, then, of course. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll, do you want to rewrite that? Ms. McCarty? Let's pull that out and make sure it's legit, and then we will move forward.
Mr. Bullock,
Mrs. Connect?
I move to approve the, oh, you just took my words away. The donations report with the exception of the Honeywell International Charity matching K. Wallace. No, no,
That's the wrong one.
wrong one.
M. Stewart. M. Stewart. It's at the
Where?
very top. Can you
Oh,
just go-
M.
you-
Stewart.
Yeah, that's right.
What I said, M. Stewart.
Okay.
Boys basketball.
Can you scroll back to the very top, if you don't mind? Thank you.
There we go.
There we go. Thank you for scrolling. Don't get me wrong. We'd like to see it all. You guys are awesome. The Scrollinator. Ooh, that's your new name. Like it.
Pull it up on mine, then I can.
You get t-shirts made with that, right?
Scrollinator?
It just sounds tough. No? I got the Mrs. Doan look. All right. I'll just eat my peanuts. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and do the new motion one. All right. Please cast your votes. All right, thank you very much, 4-0. Appreciate that, Mrs. McCarty, for making that change. All right, on to number 28, some reports. Budget Facilities Planning and Construction Report. We'll open that up real quick. I encourage everyone to please look at this because it shows where money is being spent at your local school on facilities, on safety, on security. It's always nice to see what's happening at somewhere whether you work, you live next to, or your kids attend. Especially roofs. We like roofs. New roofs. Good, all right, we'll go ahead and do that. All these reports are available online. Please take the time to look at them. You'll be impressed with how much is being done at your local school. Next item on the agenda is the district enrollment report for January 2016. It's a chance to see the net increase or decrease at your local school in each grade level. At the very last page is a summary of that process. Good. All right, thank you very much. Next item is district budget report for the month of January 2016. This one's near and dear to Mr. Hicks's heart. If it's got a dollar sign and a decimal in it, he loves it. All right, thank you very much. And again, if you have any questions about any of these reports, we have wonderful staff members who would love to sit down with you and explain it. 31, report on upcoming meetings and events. One that I'm really excited about, actually two. Peoria Education Foundation Visionary Dinner. Our very own Mrs. Connect will be offering some remarks, correct? There you go, good. And of course, the District Patriotic Speech Contest. If you can make that, please make that. That'll just warm your heart to see those kids and their patriotic speeches. I'm going to be one of the judges in the afternoon competition for 7th and 8th grade, and I'm really looking forward to that. All right, next item on the agenda is draft agenda for our next meeting, which is March 10th, 2016, a 4 p.m. start. If you notice that change, it's not 5 as usual. We're doing a 4 p.m. start. We do have a update and discussion on math. I know Mr. Jonigan is looking forward to that. All right, thank you very much. And next item on the agenda is our opportunity to readdress agenda items to do a reset. Board members, any chance to go back?
Mr. Bullock, if we could go back to the draft agenda, I think you indicated there was a 4 p.m. start, and I don't have it in
Did I
front of
do it
me.
wrong? Whoa, all right, let's go back, hold on. Take us all back there. I'm sorry, why did I say 4? I thought it said, okay. Oh, you know why? Never mind.
5 it is.
Thank you.
I'm looking at on the thing here, it says our meeting date when this is being presented is today at 4 o'clock. Let's move on, shall we? Good, as we were. Readdress, no one wants to readdress any resets? Okay, everyone's looking at me blankly, great. All right, the sad part of the night, it's time to go home. So consideration of adjournment, need a motion and a second.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, a second?
I'll second.
All right, the ladies have it. Please cast your vote. And we go home. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night. Appreciate you being here.